Good evening and welcome to the Thousand Oaks City Council meeting for Tuesday, May 11th. And I'm going to ask my colleague, Councilmember Kevin McNamee, to lead us off in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. All rise, please. Place your hand over your heart. Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And with that, could we please do the roll call?
Councilmember Adam?
Here.
Councilmember Jones?
Here.
Councilmember McNamee?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Engler?
Here.
And Mayor Bill De La Pena.
Present. Thank you. We are going to item number 5, which is our COVID-19 update presented by our city manager, Drew Powers. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Bill De La Pena. Just a very brief COVID update this evening. We have very thankfully begun our continual process of resuming in-person services at various city facilities. And I just wanted to share with those that hadn't already seen that. If you go to toaks.org, you can get the latest information. But just to highlight for you that we are back to regular hours at City Hall, 7:30 to 5 p.m. Monday to Thursday. And 8 to 5 on alternate Fridays. And so that should give us a great opportunity for those that need counter services to get in and see those and utilize those. There are precautions put into place. We just ask everyone to please adhere to those precautions as they come in to the facility. Also, please know that we are experiencing tremendous volume at our counters, and I think it's representative of the time that folks spent at their house over the past year. We're seeing a lot of activity in the residential space in particular, and in the commercial real estate market, but really in the residential world where people are making modifications to their home, putting pools in their backyard and other things. So please know that when you do arrive, you may have a little bit of a line, but I've been down there numerous times. Our team's doing a great job working folks through. We're also working on our resumption of services in person at both of our libraries. The Brimhall Library has been open since April on their schedule. Mondays and Fridays 10 to 2, Sundays 1 to 4. That's going great. Newbury Park will join them on May the 13th. And there'll be Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday, noon to 4. There's also a great new book locker that we've just gotten installed out there. It looks fantastic for the folks in Newbury Park that they'll be able to utilize. Just putting the finishing touches on that, but watch for more information. In terms of COVID itself, there still is a good trend going, 44 new cases today. Very manageable numbers on a countywide basis. We're seeing sort of a tail off in vaccination, and just encourage everyone to please avail themselves of the opportunity. There's now no longer an appointment needed for vaccination. So that's the quickest way we can get ourselves back to a place of normalcy. And it's nice to see the glimmers of that normalcy returning. We had a couple of shows that our Cultural Affairs Department put on this weekend at the Los Robles Greens Golf Course that went great. We're working on our first shows back in the theater itself, and we're seeing a good, strong ticket demand for those. So very, very excited to be heading back down that path. And for the latest information on city services, toaks.org is the best place to go. There's some news and information right off our homepage there. So toaks.org is a great place for information. And with that, I will pass it back over to you, Mayor Bill De La Pena.
Thank you so much. And speaking of vaccines, I actually got my second shot last Friday, and I was quite excited about that. All right, and now we go to our second presentation here, and I welcome this evening our Deputy Public Works Director, Nader Haidari. As we all know, Thousand Oaks would not be the incredible city it is without the dedication of our public works staff. They ensure that our infrastructure, our facilities, and our public services are effective, efficient, well-maintained. And while it seemed like the rest of the world was shut down this past year because of COVID, our public work staff remained on the job and kept the city running. So, Mr. Haidari, on behalf of the City Council, we thank you and your staff for your dedication to the City of Thousand Oaks, and we recognize your efforts with this proclamation naming May 16th through the 22nd National Public Works Week. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Mayor Bill de la Pena, and we would like to thank you and the City Council for your strong support year-round on behalf of our department, and in recognizing the value of public works here on National Public Works Week. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. And finally, we go to the Conejo Recreation and Parks District staff. They are here, some of them are here, to present an update on their adult, teen, and volunteer programs. I would like to welcome Patty Ham. She is the supervisor for the Gobel Adult Community Center. Mike McAdams, coordinator for the same center. Julie Spivak, director for the Conejo Senior Volunteer Program. And Sarah Daub, she is a supervisor for the Alex Fiore Thousand Oaks Teen Center. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Patty, would you please begin by telling us about the work that you are doing at the Adult Center?
Yes, Mayor Claudia de la Pena and fellow council members, thank you for having us here today so that we could share what has been happening at our individual units. Next slide, please. Next slide. The City of Thousand Oaks and Conejo Recreation and Park District have had a long-standing history of partnership and collaboration, which has allowed us to enrich the quality of life of the teens, adults, and seniors in our community. Next slide, please. The Gobel Adult Community Center has always been and continues to be a gem in the community for our seniors. The Gobel Center is more than just a building. For our seniors in the community, the Gobel Center is a place where they can socialize and be with friends. They can continue to learn new things and have fulfilling and meaningful experiences. Next slide, please. It has been an unimaginable year for our community and the world. At the beginning of the pandemic, when everything shut down, we canceled all programs except for our senior nutrition lunch program. As COVID numbers improved and we were given guidelines on what could be offered, we had to think outside the box and how we could provide programs to our seniors and still keep them safe. We rose to the challenge, and the following is some of the special programs we provided outside of the many Zoom programs we have been offering all year. Next slide, please.
So since the end of January, we've also been able to partner with the county to provide a vaccine center to be able to give out the Pfizer vaccine. And as of the end of April, we've given out over 34,275 shots to date. And also, as you can see on the screen, we've been able to partner with a lot of our exiting patrons and partner with their social media and get some of their, how shall we say, glee is the best way to put this, on their happiness to the fact that we were able to provide this service. And we couldn't do this without the partnership between the Park District, the city, and being able to offer this as a site for the county to be able to come in and work with. And we've now been able to add 40 nurses and staff members to our Global Center family as part of our staff. And while we will miss them when they're gone, we are looking forward to adding them back into our seniors back into our programming. Next slide, please. You can see some more of our comments from our happy patrons who've been able to get vaccinated here. Next slide. So like what I was saying, we're excited to get our seniors back into our programming. We have recently been able to open our pool room back up to seniors by appointment. And as we are able to start downgrading the vaccine clinic, we'll be able to open up to more and more programming. And there truly is no place like Global Center.
Global Center. There's no place like Global Center. There's no place like Global Center.
The Conejo Senior Volunteer Program was created to provide an opportunity for adults 55 plus to use their life experience and skills to meet local community needs. We have all had to adapt to the new realities facing us this past year and the impact it has had on our lives. During COVID, many of our volunteers have not been able to volunteer at the places near and dear to their heart. But there are those, regardless of the situation, that gave even more of their time to ensure our seniors were safe and our community looked after. These senior volunteers delivered and served meals, created Zoom classes and seminars, prepared income taxes, kept our gardens beautiful, tutored remotely, grocery shopped for other seniors, and created handmade items needed at local agencies. We are so fortunate to have these volunteers in our community. Next slide, please. On January 13th, 2021, CSVP carried on our annual Wellness Fest drive-through style. CSVP staff, advisory council volunteers, and global staff handed out 400 goodie bags filled with current wellness information from 30 local partner agencies. 400 free lunches sponsored by the Reserve at Thousand Oaks were also distributed. It was wonderful to see familiar faces and get to chat with our seniors who were thrilled to attend an event, even from inside their cars. Next slide, please. CSVP oversees the Senior Nutrition Lunch Program located at the Global Center. This grant-funded program through Ventura County Area Agency on Aging is for seniors 60 plus. This congregate meal program transitioned to a drive-through walk-up program in March of 2020. From March 13th, 2020 through April 13th, 2021, CSVP and CRPD staff have served 46,700 meals. Next slide, please. The Conejo Senior Volunteer Program's free income tax program is in cooperation with the IRS, and it is in its 31st year. Generally, there are 6+ free tax programs throughout Ventura County, but due to COVID complications, only 2 were able to keep their programs open this season. We have had hundreds of calls per day and feel very fortunate that we were able to open and serve clients from all over the county. Our volunteer tax coordinators have spent hundreds of hours adopting a hybrid virtual in-person tax program this season. Beginning February 12th, CSVP began scheduling tax appointments. Clients came to 2 different locations at the Global Center where they would have their documents scanned to our preparers who were working from home. I will spare you the other 14 steps involved in this operation, but like to mention the time and the hours that our volunteer preparers gave to ensure that this important program carried on. With the IRS extension, CSVP transitioned to our in-person program on April 7th and will continue until May 14th. While following strict CDC guidelines and adjusting to many challenges and modifications, CSVP volunteers thus far have worked over 5,000 hours and have prepared 1,500 free tax returns, bringing $1.2 million back to our community. Next slide, please. CSVP would like to offer an extra special thank you to the City of Thousand Oaks City Council for awarding us with the COVID Relief Grant. We are so grateful to be chosen for this grant along with the other incredible agencies in the Conejo Valley. Since being awarded this grant in December, CSVP volunteers have handmade many items for Conejo Valley agencies. Some of these items include over 2,500 masks for Los Robles Hospital, the Autism Society, many mansions, Food Share, and the National Park Service, blankets, pillowcases, beanies, and scarves for James Storehouse, mastectomy pillows and stroke aprons for Los Robles Hospital, lap blankets for Hospice of the Conejo, and baby blankets for Conejo Community Outreach. As our community agencies begin to reopen, CSVP looks forward to offering many new volunteer opportunities to our seniors. We are most excited to reopen our lunch program and boutique and to bring our senior volunteers and senior patrons back to the Goebel Center. Next slide, please.
It was an exciting time. We were nearing the end of our middle school and high school league play, where 30 teams were competing in basketball and volleyball. And then within a couple days, it all had to end. The teen center was closed. What we thought was for a short amount of time, over 1 year later, the building remains closed to the general public for drop-in recreation. Who knew the coronavirus pandemic would impact us so greatly? Similar to other community happenings, the teen center's regularly scheduled programs had to be modified or canceled. The summer and fall program sessions were slow due to strict guidelines and public apprehension. Next slide. As time went on and things did not open, we had to put our thinking caps on and figure out what we could offer to our patrons given the circumstances and strict guidelines. Popular classes were and continue to be mountain biking, Girls on the Run, art media, driver's ed camp, Zoom classes that are science and technology based, and we even were able to offer the ever so popular surf camp. Next slide. With the guidelines loosening a bit, the current spring session proved the public is anxious to be back with good class sizes. We are excited to welcome them back into the building. We are currently working with the school district to offer our 6th grade Teen Tech Day in June via Zoom and have a golf tournament scheduled for middle and high school students the end of this month. Summer program rosters are filling up, though our ever popular sport leagues, middle school dances, and special events such as our indoor concerts will not be offered until at least the fall. Next slide. So what else happened when the pandemic hit? A long overdue project of tackling the ThousandOaksTeenCenter.com website. It was determined that 53% of the users used a mobile platform, so it is now optimized for mobile use. It also now features an exclusive class menu, parallax scrolling effects to modernize the user experience, dynamic video-based backgrounds, and it's faster, cleaner, and easier to navigate. Since the new website launch, we have seen a 47% increase in visitors. Coming up next, we'll be adding page-specific QR codes. Next slide. Also, during some slower days, we focused on our most popular location of the building, the game room. An ongoing issue during normal operation was too many teens and too few video game systems. So we expanded the gaming on the west side of the room. We added 4 4K smart TVs, each with their own Xbox systems, removed cabinet doors and added lights and diamond plating. The Gaming Trust TVs were also upgraded in the middle of the room, and still to come is the next generation consoles. Teen Center staff, along with CRPD maintenance team, made this all happen. Next slide. We are beyond thrilled the backyard renovation and expansion project is now in the permitting process. We are really anxious to get to celebrate opening back up and the start of the project this summer. When completed, the outdoor basketball court, skate plaza, built-in barbecue, and stage area will allow us to add some top-notch programming. The city also completed the roofing project, which included replacement of the frosty lobby skylights. We literally can see the stars now. Next slide. Due to some flooding, the wood floor was down for some time in the gymnasium. We are thankful the building was closed, but no one missed any playtime and programming was not impacted. When the public is allowed back in, we will get to reveal to them the newly sanded and striped wood floor, complete now with a Teen Center logo mid-court. Next slide. The Youth Outreach Department housed at the Teen Center has adjusted their scope of service with the Conejo Valley Unified School District to conduct Zoom groups with middle and high school students that are referred from school staff. Outreach staff also provide supervision and support for students that are struggling with school and now come to the Teen Center for their remote learning. Next slide. The community-wide donation program of bikes called Bicycles for Success has remained popular. The outreach team gets donated bikes and turns them around to needy teens quickly. Donated bikes are always needed if anyone has one sitting in their garage. Next slide. In closing, thank you to the City of Thousand Oaks for always being supportive. We appreciate the ongoing collaboration that have allowed for the Teen Center to be so successful. We are very proud of the upgrades we were able to accomplish during this last year and think the public will be as well. We are looking forward to our summer season fast approaching, where hopefully we will be able to start rocking and rolling again because we are READ ready. Thank you.
Wow, what an incredible presentation. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Quite the update. And we all can't wait to see the improvement to the Teen Center outdoors especially. So thank you all very much, and we're really proud of our ongoing strong partnership with CRPD. All right. And with that, I'm going to ask the city clerk to announce public comments, please.
This is the time and place for public comments for those wishing to address the City Council regarding items on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction. All remarks should be addressed to the council as a whole. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. Please remain muted until the mayor calls your name. Under state law, public comment matters may not be considered by the council unless listed on the agenda, but may be referred to the city manager for administrative follow-up. 27 individuals have requested to speak, and pursuant to council standards, speakers are allowed 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I would like to remind the speakers that, as you heard, you do have 3 minutes, and I will ask you right at 3 minutes when you come to the end to please stop. Otherwise, when we allow many people to go over, then that wouldn't be fair to others who are keeping to their 3-minute limit. So with that, we will begin with our Chief of Police, Chief Freihoff. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City staff. I just wanted to give the community a quick update that the Sheriff's Office is going to be launching some new dashboards that'll be available on the Sheriff's website that will cover some data that may be important for people to know. Our UCR, which is our Unified Crime Reporting Data, that will date back to 1991 to present as far as where we stand on crime trends. It'll also have our use of force data from 2015 to present, where the residents can scroll to see some additional details on the use of force that occurs here in the city of Thousand Oaks, and frankly for the whole county that's under the sheriff's jurisdiction. And then also the new RIPA data collection that we started this past year. RIPA stands for the Racial Identity and Profiling Act, which is a new law passed in California requiring agencies to capture certain data when we contact subjects through detention, whether it's a traffic stop or a call for service. In the next couple of weeks, those dashboards will be launched for the public to see. So we're really excited to be able to share that data with our community. So thank you all. Thank you very much for your time.
And thank you for that transparency. Very welcome. Thank you, Chief. Second speaker is, I believe, Transportation Commissioner Justin Link.
Good evening, Mayor Bill De La Pena and members of council. My name is Justin Ling, City Traffic Engineer for the City of Simi Valley, Planning Commissioner for the City of Thousand Oaks, and Treasurer for the Ventura County chapter of the American Public Works Association, or APWA. APWA is a nationwide organization comprised of over 29,000 professionals of various disciplines, with a common goal of maintaining and improving infrastructure in communities across North America. Our chapter has over 300 members and is one of the most active of all 63 chapters. I am here on behalf of the Ventura County chapter tonight, and very apropos in advance of Public Works Week and the proclamation award to the Public Works Department, to present the City of Thousand Oaks with the 2020 Transportation Project of the Year Award for the Phase 1 Thousand Oaks Boulevard Streetscape Project. This award recognizes the efforts of the Thousand Oaks Public Works Department, an APWA accredited agency, to continuously improve quality of life for its constituents. The project is the first of several phases to improve the boulevard and fulfill the objectives of the Thousand Oaks Boulevard Specific Plan by creating better and greater pedestrian connectivity, landscape improvements, and replacement of undersized and aging infrastructure. This project could not have been successful without the leadership of the City Council and City Manager, or the expert engineering and construction management by the city's Public Works Department, led by Project Manager Ida Ferruza. It is my honor to congratulate the city on receiving this award, especially as a resident of the City of Thousand Oaks. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. You're wearing several hats, planning commissioner and, of course, being a traffic engineer at the same time. So thank you very much for this award. We appreciate that. And, of course, this is also evidence, again, how great our Public Works Department is and our staff in general. So thank you very, very much. Appreciate that. All right. Next speaker is Carol Shelton, followed by Vince Shelton.
Good evening, Mayor Bill De La Pena, council members, and city staff. My name is Carol Shelton, and I live in Thousand Oaks with my 3 children. I have lived in Thousand Oaks for 40 years. I want to thank the City Council for issuing a mental health awareness proclamation. Our family knows firsthand how mental health issues impact families. My son faces barriers in speaking for himself in a meeting like this, and tonight you will hear his voice right after my comments. Vince wants desperately to exercise his agency over his life and to be accepted and supported by a circle of friends and community members. Vince also wants meaningful work and to experience the joys of life, including good food and entertainment. I want to thank Mayor Bill De La Pena, council members, and city staff for providing my son Vince the accommodations he needs to meaningfully participate tonight. I know how hard it is to try new things, and all of the city staff that contacted me showed me that they were supportive and wanting to make this work for Vince. For that, I am deeply thankful. The City Council will be honoring Vince's voice, and he will participate tonight via a pre-recorded video. Please hear Vince as he exercises agency over his life. Thank you for listening to me and to him.
Thank you so much, and looking forward to meeting Vince.
My name is Vincent Shelton, and I live in Thousand Oaks. Thank you for figuring out how I can make my public comments. And my family, friends, and allies live in Thousand Oaks. This is where I want to call home. I love it here. Thank you for your time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Vince. Great job. And thank you, Mom, too, for making this happen. Next, we have Anaí Quiroz Romero, followed by Judith Bruce and Sue Andaloro.
Good afternoon, members of the City Council and neighbors. My name is Anaí Quiroz Romero, and I have had the good fortune to live in the beautiful city of Thousand Oaks for the last 17 years. As a member of Chalice, I was so grateful to read the visionary and caring statement of the city's #1 priority goal to create a more equitable, accessible, safe, welcoming, and inclusive government and community, regardless of race, color, ethnicity, religion, sex, physical or mental ability, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, age, language, education, and socioeconomic status. Bravo! This statement aligns with my core values and resonates with our first Unitarian Universalist principle of affirming the inherent worth and dignity of every person. I think it's very important for us to have priorities that guide what we do and measure who we want to become, because on June 5th, 2018, we look really ugly on the inside. Today, I want to share a story of how I learned that the things that created slavery and the Holocaust are still with us, and often we don't even notice them because we do not talk about them. I often date outside of my race. When I go out with white males, I get stares, but those stares were nothing compared to the stares that I received from the Hispanic community when I dated an American-born Chinese 6 years ago. We met at Borderline while taking country dance lessons. As a sociologist by natural intuition and academic training, I immediately noticed I was breaking a social rule I did not know existed. I had to ask, where is this coming from? How did I miss that as a Mexican woman, I was not supposed to date a Chinese man? A simple Google search led me to find out that on May 15, 1911, around 303 Chinese people were massacred by Maderista troops in Torreon, Coahuila during the Mexican Revolution. The worst is that it was not an isolated incident. When I was in Mexico, I was a very good student, and I never heard anything about this Mexican history. I asked Professor Alamillo at CI why I did not know this, and turns out he covers the Torreon massacre as this incident is referred to in one of his Chicano studies classes. We must build bridges between our divisions. There is a time for everything under the heavens, and right now we are being called to sit in discomfort and have these difficult conversations, to find out who we want to become and find the soul of the city that we want to create. We must address all these comments that sound anti-social justice or in favor of inequality. If we do not do this now, when? If it is not us, who? Then maybe we'll have a local homeless shelter 10 years from now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Judith Bruce, followed by Sue Andaloro, and then Jeff Schwartz. Good evening.
Oh, video. Okay. Yes. Good evening. I'm Judy Bruce. I live in Simi Valley, California. What does Agenda 2030, social justice, and critical race theory have in common? All are top-down, United Nations, dystopian, global to local policies that end up in our city and counties' general plans, whose end goal is world domination. Agenda 2030 uses euphemisms like vision, sustainability, and smart growth, all behind the green mask of, quote, saving the planet. These buzzwords are code for surveillance and restrictions on our property and liberties, property rights and liberties. Agenda 2030 is a communitarianism and is suffocating our individual rights in favor of the rights of the community. Social justice is a buzzword that social engineers use to manipulate the masses by using euphemisms like human rights and equity and ethical. These are code words for tyranny, loss of private property, and totalitarianism. Critical race theory is also dystopian because it uses, quote, identity politics, white against black, rich versus poor, as a tool to sow hatred among people where there should be friendship. Every person of goodwill should know that judging people based on their physical characteristics is cruel and it's wrong. Unfortunately, it is becoming a default ideology in our public institutions that must be stopped. Through policies such as these, we are being led into a top-down globalist governance controlled by unelected, unaccountable, technocratic bureaucrats. Is that what you want? Are we the people still in control of this city? When are you going to begin to act like you are? Thank you.
Next speaker is Sue Andaloro, followed by Jeff Schwartz, and then Elizabeth McDonald. Sue?
Hi. Hi, I'm Susan Andaloro in Thousand Oaks. About vaccine passports, they discriminate. 40% of seniors, 15% of poor people, and 15% of several minority groups do not have cell phones to even use it. California Code 24174 states that it is the law that I get to decide what happens to my body. This vaccine caused at least 4,000 deaths and 14,000 serious injuries in the last 5 months, and this is on the CDC website. 30% of frontline workers don't want to get it. I'm not against vaccines. I'm against this vaccine, and I already can't go to many countries because I didn't get it. And now they want to put more restrictions on us with this vaccine passport. Frankly, I'm horrified by all the pushing of vaccines when the death rate this year is just like the past few years. It is at a very slow increase of less than 1%. I oppose these vaccine passports in any way, shape, or form. And as far as the critical race theory that they are trying to drive into all of our schools, as someone who was completely indoctrinated through our school system and in college, I agree with Dr. Ben Carson, who said that critical race theory is a deliberate means to sow division and cripple our nation from within, and that teaching white people they are bad and black people that they are victims and incapable is not healthy. And that's all I have to say today.
Next speaker is Jeff Schwartz, followed by Elizabeth McDonald, and then Michelle Patrick.
Good evening. I'm Jeff S., and I represent a group called Open Discussion. I'm a resident of this great city. I know that all of us here are well-meaning people who want to do the right thing for our families and loved ones and for our community at large. Common sense tells us that it's almost never a good idea to be allowed to listen to only one side of a discussion, but be completely prevented from listening to the other side. Even honest, well-meaning people like ourselves can make honest mistakes if we've heard only one side of a story, but been prevented from hearing the other. Censorship of public policy discussion is a very unhealthy thing and a serious danger to a free society. That's why free speech and a free press are guaranteed by the First Amendment. The problem right now is that most of us are not even aware that we are listening to only one side of the discussion in regards to the COVID situation. All serious questions raised by credible people with credible backgrounds about this situation and the government response to it have been systematically censored, blacked out, and removed from public discussion. This censorship is being done by not only every single mainstream media outlet, but also by virtually every single big tech social media platform. They're all censoring what you are able to hear about this. This level of censorship in America right now, I believe, is truly unprecedented. There are many, many highly trained and credentialed doctors, scientists, and analysts who are asking serious questions about this situation. Many are saying that for various reasons, we're getting fundamental things wrong with our understanding of the COVID situation and our responses to it. I'm asking all of you to reach out to seek the other side of this discussion and listen to it. It's very easy. All you need to do is go to the link on my screen and watch a couple of videos. Please watch the first video called Voiceless Victims of the Lockdowns, which is available on YouTube. And also please watch the other videos that are listed on my screen. The address is tinyurl.com/DHE2UJ7M. I guarantee that you will learn something useful and important. Thank you very much.
Elizabeth McDonald is next, followed by Michelle Patrick, and then Jose Coronado.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello. Good evening, Mayor, and good evening, City Council. I am here because I'm very concerned about the Social Justice Commission. Do we know what that means? Well, I'll tell you what it means. The Social Justice Commission is the arm of the CCP, okay? They are Marxist and they are communist. And that includes BLM, which is a terrorist organization. Look what they have done to Portland, okay? Bringing this type of commission into our city is completely unconstitutional, okay? This impedes on our First Amendment, freedom of speech, and it impedes on equal protection under the law. This is absolutely makes no sense. We are all free people, okay? When I am shopping around in Thousand Oaks, when I go into the library, or if I go into the, I don't see anything that says you have to be white to come into there, okay? So I urge you not to have the Social Justice Commission in our city because it's nothing but divisive and it's actually racist. So remember, it's we the people and we vote you all in and we can vote you all out. Thank you.
Next speaker is Michelle Patrick, followed by Jose Coronado and then Peggy Rosenberg.
Good evening, esteemed City Council members. My name
Did we
Good
lose?
evening.
Michelle, are you there now?
Yes. can
Okay,
you
go
hear me?
ahead. Go ahead.
Good evening, esteemed City Council members. My name is Michelle Patrick, and I live in the city of Thousand Oaks, Westlake Village. Thank you so much for allowing me to voice my opinion of many Westlake Village residents tonight. I am coming to you this evening to discuss the issue of the general plan. As you know, most residents have been highly frustrated with the biased involved in the survey. From using the Delphi method on the questions asked to the comments on the survey being made by the same people to only having 2,000 comments out of a population of 120,000 and the extreme difficulty to even enter the site or be a part of the survey. My time here tonight is not to waste time with the insignificant intake of data and the bias it has created by Ramsey and Associate, but it is to be that beacon of light to ask a few pertinent questions and show observations that may actually help you come to a significant outcome for our beautiful city. We understand that Sacramento legislature has passed laws compelling cities to make decisions about their general plan. Also, that Sacramento claims that the state needs a certain number of units to be built. However, most of your residents have serious questions about the methodology and thus incorrect conclusion that we are designing the future of our entire city upon. The residents of Thousand Oaks and Westlake Village deserve at worst a clarification thereof, but at least these numbers need to be revisited to see where the obvious problems lie. I want the City Council to know that the reasons the citizens of your city are coming to you is because we have been involved in this process for over a year and a half. And from the beginning of the process, we were meeting face to face to now via surveys. Our voice hasn't been heard. The Planning Commission has failed this city and its residents. And this is why we are coming to the City Council to exercise its authority to revisit the entire process, to listen to its constituents while approving Sacramento, Measure E, and Regional Housing Needs Assessment Number. My first suggestion would be to simply allocate mixed-use units based on Sacramento's allocation only over the next 8 years. I repeat, this is really important. Sacramento's demands can be met without fines by only looking at the development for the city over the next 8 years and not the next 20 years. The City Council should set a goal to put aside an adequate number of mixed-use units that may or may not be developed in 8 years. It needs to be planned for. In our case, Ventura County was given a number. The county allocated
Thank you, Michelle.
$2,620.
Your time
Thank
is
you.
up. Thank you. Next speaker, we have Jose Coronado, followed by Peggy Rosenberg, and then Cheryl Hall. And you do have 3 minutes.
City Council, I'm Jose Coronado. Madam Mayor, I've never participated in a public forum, official public forum like this, so I thank you. But my reasons for speaking are my motivations to begin to address City Council, our elected representatives, and my fellow citizens. If we go forward and we address planning issues facing this city, where I have lived off and on over the last 30 years, I would like there to be two things: transparency and due diligence. Specifically, I want to address the initiatives of this city that are informed by those who embrace divisive racial and social justice rhetoric. Okay, there are plenty of Thousand Oaks residents like myself who are people of color, in my case, Mexican American, who oppose the explicitly racialist justice groups now seeking to divide citizens into skin color factions and doing so for their own agenda. Please keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, there is nothing new about these groups, about the intersectional activities they're promoting. See, 30 years ago, as a young student at UCLA, I encountered exactly these arguments. Only back then, we called it institutional racism. It was not systemic racism, as is so popular today. But back then, the tactics of these activists were about attacking and dismissing the United States Constitution with the Bill of Rights and the First Amendment. Being a very young person recently in the military, and a vet, I found this puzzling. But for these people, telling me that as a person of color, that the rule of law was a white man's illusion, and to them, only power relationships between the races or different groups matter in questions of law and justice. Your race matters everything, but not you as an individual. These activists won't tell you this up front, but their aims are not equality under the law, and certainly not about conflict resolution between different groups, okay? In fact, quite the opposite happens. We can see places like San Francisco and New York City, where the institutions, from the public schools to our elected bodies, are steeped in the language and in the ideology of social justice, and specifically critical race theory. And we have an epidemic of violence committed against Asian elders, and almost always by people of color. I implore the City Council and everyone under the sound of my voice not to take my word for this, but to do your due diligence and review what these people are saying, and review what is happening in cities such as Seattle or Portland or Oakland. And with that said, let me just thank the City Council and my fellow citizens, and I'm done.
Next speaker is Peggy Rosenberg, followed by Cheryl Hall, and then Caleb Standifer.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to share information regarding my concerns about major change to the general plans for Thousand Oaks. I cannot help but wonder, have you considered the real impact upzoning has on wonderful towns and small cities like Thousand Oaks? Are you aware there are rarely mentioned aspects of the changes upzoning brings about in those cities and towns using redevelopment to accommodate more people from the surrounding areas? The proposed changes could lead to unmentioned changes. For example, a brief video of what has happened in the Seattle area neighborhood of Ballard opened my eyes. There are far more downsides to upsizing than I already knew of. I learned from the video, named The False Promise of Residential Infill Rezoning and Redevelopment, that there are some negative results that seem to never be mentioned when presenting plans to communities considering making such sweeping changes. Seem familiar? When the transition began, 50% of Seattle was zoned single-family residential, and 62% of Seattle's tree canopy was within that area. From 2001 to 2007, the single-family residential lots undergoing redevelopment lost 41% of their tree canopy, while the multi-unit lots lost 69% of their tree canopies. Just imagine what that would look like here in Thousand Oaks. We would increase air pollution, decrease oxygen levels in our air, add heat by reducing tree shade, and lead people to wonder how the city earned its name. Thousand Oaks could become a very sad misnomer. It's high time we all learn more about what lies ahead as we discuss the proposed changes. I recommend everyone view the brief eye-opening video on YouTube. Pay attention to the details. Share the link with your family, friends, neighbors, everyone who lives or works in Thousand Oaks and loves what we have here. View the false promise of residential infill rezoning and redevelopment. It will be well worth your time and may help you help us save the Thousand Oaks we love. And please, I hope that our city council members will recognize that there is so much more to the story of what will happen with some of the proposed changes than being told. It's there, it's available. There are many, many aspects other than only those that have been being discussed. And I hope you'll take a look into them, because once things like this are changed, we can't go back and undo them. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to your cooperation in representing the community.
Cheryl Hall is our next speaker, followed by Caleb Standifer and then Susan Thee. Cheryl Hall. If she's not there, then we move on to Caleb Standifer or Standafer.
Hello?
Is that you, Cheryl?
Hello?
Cheryl?
Yes, I'm sorry. It's the first time I phoned in. And
all right.
I
Cheryl,
think
you
I
have
got it
3
now.
minutes, and the clock has started.
Okay, thank you. I would like to express my opposition over your even considering any of these systemic racist ideologies embedded in the so-called social justice and equity movement. The proponents of this are racist themselves. Do not waste 1 cent of our taxpayers' dollars playing into these tactics to perpetrate racism where racism doesn't exist. Stop playing the race card. Of course, there can exist a racist anywhere, but one offender does not represent an entire city or community. We cannot generalize and make an invalidated, sweeping statement that the entire city of Thousand Oaks is plagued with racism. This is the exact intention of the 805 Resistance and other hate groups who cry out for so-called social justice and equity to put in a commission to keep racism alive and front and center of our everyday lives, as though that's what we are surrounded with each day in our community. Well, I, for one, will not participate in any form of this so-called social justice and equity hate indoctrination that provokes racism and strives to create racial divides and victimhood where it is basically non-existent, and neither will I allow my children to be indoctrinated with this hatred and victimhood mentality. Thank you and have a nice evening.
Caleb Standifer or Standafer, followed by Susan Thee and then Clint. Do we have Caleb?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Caleb Standifer. I live in Thousand Oaks, and I want to speak to the general plan. I have 3 points. Citing dwelling units on the 36.5-acre parcel that is critical for flood hazard mitigation in the Costa Conejo community is very questionable. In the early 90s, I believe it was 1993, but I could be off by a year or two, my son's baseball Little League organization asked to put baseball fields on this parcel. The city told them that was not possible because the area is for flood control. What has happened between 1993 and now that we consider dwelling units on land that was not suitable for baseball fields? Is there other land that will be used for flood control? Is the city planning for new infrastructure at a cost of millions that can replace the flood control benefit of 36.5 acres? How would residences on this parcel impact the flood control for the homes in the unincorporated areas adjacent to this parcel? A full explanation is needed before moving ahead with a plan for this parcel. My second point, the citizens of TO are here because of the environment and suburban atmosphere. Many voices have been raised objecting to the new development that will change the character of our city. If a plan must be made for new housing units, then the plan should be for the minimum necessary. Plan no more than the 2,621 units assigned by the county and state. Then create a plan to join with other cities to fight Sacramento so cities will not be assigned any more housing units. The preference of many citizens is to give Sacramento no more than is required. My third point is my work experience and license is relevant. I'm a CPA. I've held that license in California for 42 years. It is possible that if you have to develop a plan to satisfy the 81,000 capacity, it can be done in a way that would be unattractive to developers. For example, if you have a newly built industrial building that costs $10 million with a return on investment for 10 years, it could be torn down and then used for mixed use if the plan so called for. So the building owner could tear it down, spend another $10 million for mixed use or $20 million, and now you've got $30 million. So the amount of money needed to earn the rate of return necessary to be attractive to a developer would probably make the rents higher than people want to pay. You could do this to satisfy Sacramento and also satisfy the citizens of Thousand Oaks because it's unlikely that anything would be built. That's just an out-of-the-box thinking from a CPA. Thanks for listening. Good night.
Susan Thie, followed by Clint, and then Deborah Baber or Baber.
Hello, Mayor. Just ask you to start your video.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to answer the questions that were on the phone. My name is Susan Thie, and I came to the Conejo Valley 35 years ago when I was employed at Thousand Oaks High School as a biology teacher. And I've been a chemistry and advanced placement environmental science teacher. And I was going to talk about the development and how that development is going to create a microclimate going from a small village community growth plan to a high density plan. The consequences on overloading the infrastructure along with the schools and libraries and recreation facilities, along with causing a new microclimate to be developed when soils dry out and trees cannot hold the moisture because there are not enough of them. We came to Ventura County because of that small town feel. And just for one moment to talk about critical race theory, my great grandmother, when she was 14, walked from northern Mexico to Los Angeles. My grandmother was a maid for the mayor of Beverly Hills. My dad was a pilot and worked for Jet Propulsion Laboratory as an engineer. I am a biology teacher. I live and I'm blessed to be in a land of opportunity. We have had every opportunity to go from rags to riches in this country. We should be extolling the virtues of a free country and not cutting it down and attacking one group for another. I want to thank all the citizens of Ventura County and the United States for those opportunities that they've given my family. This is a wonderful, good country. We're able to bring our concerns about the development to this board, and you listen to us. And so I am so thankful to be living in this wonderful, beautiful country, and I thank you for your service to the citizens of Ventura County and Thousand Oaks. and the sacrifice you make to sit in the seats that you sit in to serve this community. And so thank you all, Mayor and City Council. Thank you very, very, very much. And I pray for you, and I'm praying that God will give you wisdom to do the best job you can. Thank you.
Clint is next, followed by Deborah Bobber and Elsa Aldeguer.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. My name is Clint. I live in Thousand Oaks, and I'm a member of the Conejo Climate Coalition. California officials have warned that this year's wildfire season could quickly become the worst on record. Already, fires have burned 18 square miles more than had burned by this time last year, according to new figures by CAL FIRE. California is in the midst of a statewide drought and has seen a 2-year rain deficit. Brian Rhodes, Deputy Fire Director of the U.S. Forest Service, recently said, quote, "Places that normally don't burn or don't burn well because of the drought, they have the potential to burn this year. There's no place in California really anymore that is immune to wildfire," end quote. You've heard me say this before, but it bears repeating. Ventura County's average temperature has already increased 4.7 degrees since 1895, making ours the fastest warming county in the continental United States. That average is projected to climb 3 to 5 degrees more in inland areas, including Thousand Oaks, over the next 20 years. We are in a climate emergency. When making plans for the future of Thousand Oaks, I urge the mayor, the city council, and anyone listening to make decisions based on science that recognizes that we are in a climate crisis. We need long-term thinking that acknowledges that our county is only getting hotter and that we must focus on reducing greenhouse gases. Emphasis on short-term profit should not be put aside, or should be put aside, for the good of future generations. The Conejo Climate Coalition would like to see a forward-thinking plan in Thousand Oaks. We would like to see mixed use distributed to village centers to create more walkable and livable town squares. Community members still have the chance to fill out the preferred land use alternative survey. Have it completed by 11:55 p.m. on Wednesday, May 12th. You can find the survey at toaks2045.org. Let your voice be heard and let the city know if you agree or disagree with the preferred land use alternative designations. Again, you have until tomorrow night at 11:55 p.m. to have the survey completed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, we have Deborah Bobber, followed by Elsa Aldeguer, and then David Schechter. Deborah Bobber.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. The name is Baber, the last name. Good evening, elected civil servants. Too many among us do not know the role we are supposed to play in our democratic republic, our self-governing nation, nor do we understand the authority that we actually have. This explains why governments are out of control. The swamps in Washington, D.C. and Sacramento are fed by our nation's counties. The county headwaters are fed by the tributaries like school boards, city councils, and other elected bodies. This is the reason people say all politics are local. This is why dark money with its hidden interests and ulterior motives works so hard to control what happens in Thousand Oaks and elsewhere. A paid group of operators and bad actors work for a small, corrupt movement, which has on their website the following mission statement, quote, "Resist together, focused change starting in Ventura County with a global mindset to collaborate and create change on social and racial justice issues worldwide," end of quote. Like you, I exist in the world, but I live in Ventura County. Our contract staff, hired through elections, are performing poorly. Some, like Linda Parks, the county supervisor for this area for Thousand Oaks, and her colleagues on the Board of Supervisors, are acting outside their authority. They have been taking money from Sacramento and have been governing for Sacramento and not for Ventura County. You began this evening, a lot of the early time this evening, talking about a disease that has a 99% survival rate. Many others this evening spoke about Thousand Oaks meeting Sacramento's housing goals. My question to you, who are you governing for, Thousand Oaks or Sacramento? Thank you.
Next, we have Elsa Aldeguer, followed by David Schechter, and then Jim Anderson.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Elsa Aldiger, and I'm an immigrant from El Salvador. And I currently live in the San Fernando Valley, but I used to live in the Westlake Village for many years. And I'm very concerned about you guys considering having a social justice commission. Being from another country, I have learned that the law of the land, it's what we are supposed to follow. And I think this is very unconstitutional to look at one skin color, favor one skin color more than the other. I'm a mother of a biracial kid. He is half Black. And I teach him that true justice, it's about him earning a position, not because we are a certain color, we have to be given preference. So I'm begging you, council members and mayor, to not think of this Justice Commission as something that it's gonna favor the community, because I miss living in the Thousand Oaks area. Right now, I am unfortunately living in the San Fernando Valley, and I'm telling you that you guys do not want to start mixing skin color with, politics. I firmly believe that if you study hard, this is what I teach my son, if you study hard, you will get whatever you want. But it's not about skin color, it's about we deserving and working hard for what we want. Thank you very much.
David Schechter, followed by Jim Anderson and Joel Mancuso.
David Schechter, and I'm a 24-year resident of Newbury Park. All three of my kids live in the Conejo Valley School District. The proposal to create a social justice commission is in fact by arrogance, greed, and immaturity. The premise behind their demands is that substantiated emotional appeals. The residents of Thousand Oaks get to decide what is important to us, how we see the world. These individuals with the baseless complaints do not. In particular, I would encourage the council to please question any assertion that the proposal represents a consensus among Thousand Oaks residents. No such consensus exists, and the proponents of the Social Justice Commission have presented no.
Mr. Schechter, I apologize. We had a very bad connection, but we did get the gist of your message across regarding social equity. Next up, we have Joel Mancuso. I'm sorry, Jim Anderson, and then Joel Mancuso.
Mute. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we do.
I apologize. I had to unmute. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, City Council, for the opportunity to speak this evening. First of all, I'd like to address one thing that was said prior is if we're following the true science, then we will not believe the talking points of global warming. Global warming, it is proven, our globe has not warmed in over 20 years. So that's why they changed the term to climate change and their talking points to try to fit the narrative. That being said, what I'm talking about is social justice. And I firmly believe that we are living in the greatest equal opportunity in the world, that everyone can make and be of themselves what they choose to. And that's what it is. We're talking about choice. Thousand Oaks is open to everyone who wants the American dream. Why are people coming to our country to live the American dream when they're fleeing other countries? If there's racial inequality, if there's systemic racism, why is the largest segment of society the Nigerian population that is coming here if there's white supremacy? It's a fallacy. It's talking points. It is all meant to divide people by immutable traits. Equity and outcome is not justice. It is a recipe for spreading misery equally. There is no such thing, in my opinion, as social justice. There's simply justice. You make and determine of yourself what you choose to do. Equal opportunity is true justice. No one is barred from our community for the color of their skin or the faith that they hold. We are the most welcoming community in the country, in my opinion. Name one business, if you will, development, if you will, private club in this town that bars membership or ownership on race or based on religion. Can somebody name for me the hate crimes committed in this community and who they were that carried them out? There was one individual in April, I believe, who spewed racial slurs and threw something at a car in Camarillo. That does not mandate or dictate who we are in our county. We must stand against this systemic program and talking points, the 805 plan to divide people by their race, by their beliefs, by their ethnicity, whatever it may be. I truly believe that as the council in the city of Thousand Oaks, we need to stand against this division that's seeking to rear its ugly head when we are the most equal opportunity on the planet. Thank you so much for your time.
And our next speaker is Joel Mancuso, followed by John, and then Audrey Bruckner.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Joelle Mancuso. I've been a resident of Thousand Oaks for the last 22 years, raised my family here. Should the City Council consider forming a social justice committee for the City of Thousand Oaks? When I first heard about this, my initial thoughts were fairness, justice, compassion, equality. Those are all great characteristics of community members. Yet when we look at our city governments to form policy and guidelines for our city, we have to ask better questions than that. We have to ask ourselves, is it the proper role of our city council? According to our website, and even hearing all the reports from the great departments of our city, providing clean water, sewage, garbage disposal, parks, rec, emergency services, senior services, CRPD, business support, housing services. There's no systemic racism in any of those departments. They are thriving. They are there for all. They're running and they are working, and there is no racism within our system. Now, I understand the desire for citizens to use our governing bodies to make everyone make better choices and think right thoughts. But it's simply not the role of the city council. Our city council is functioning justly and properly. Now, I'm a health practitioner, and I see it this way. I think everyone would be better off if they didn't shop in the center aisles of the grocery store, where boxed and bagged foods are located and where our country's heart disease, cancer, and diabetes starts. In fact, wouldn't it be a terrific idea to create a committee? The city council creating a committee to prevent the purchasing of unhealthy food? Sounds good, right? But it's not the function of the city council to form a special committee on how to eradicate unhealthy beliefs or habits. It's not the function of the city council to study why my neighbor buys Cheetos and Oreos instead of carrots and broccoli. Now, this example might be seen a little silly, but in principle, asking citizens to be better, to choose better, is not the proper role of my city government. Healthy choices begin in the home, not in a city committee. There is a proper form and function of government, and in our city, it's to make sure our individuals have equal access to the services we offer all of our citizens. And we have that in Thousand Oaks. If our humanity needs to be addressed, it needs to begin in our homes, where our seeds of compassion need to be, but not by forming a city committee. Thousand Oaks doesn't have a systemic racism problem, and that's what I wanted to share tonight. Thank you. Back to you, Mayor.
John is followed by Audrey Bruckner. Do we have John?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead, John.
Wait. Okay. Good evening. My name is John from Thousand Oaks. First, I want to say thank you for your service on the City Council. I know it can sometimes be challenging. Okay, on to the topic at hand. Please do not participate in critical race theory, social justice, racial justice, or environmental justice issues, or equity issues. Be careful with diversity and inclusion, too. I hope we all include all people of all walks of life already. I know my friends and I do. I have extensive experience in information operations, military deception, and psychological operations. And I'll tell you, when you start hearing words like justice used with other words like social or racial, beware. Most people who speak these words don't even realize it, but these words are used by Marxists, communists. When you hear these words, they're about to trick you. Don't fall for it. They are trying to divide us. The idea that we segregate any people out of any neighborhoods by building homes so that someone can't afford it is ridiculous. The only reason someone can't get a particular home in a neighborhood is because they need to save more money. No one is saying someone can't buy a house there. We are all equal. Everyone has the same opportunity and freedom. Thousand Oaks has been my hometown since 1965, and we cherish all people here. None of my friends and my multiracial family are racist in any way. All my friends, family, and I love all our brothers and sisters in this town. I love seeing people of different colors. All the different colors of all us human beings just creates a more beautiful tapestry. So please don't let these rules for radical types trick you into making you think that you don't understand because you have some kind of white privilege or Asian privilege or whatever kind of privilege. It's a communist trick from a communist playbook on subversion. Don't fall for it. And don't let them make you think that we need a special commission or we need to provide extra training in the workplace and in schools. That will corrupt our town and it will divide us. We already have laws in the Constitution and the Civil Rights Act. They cover us with equality and protect us from discrimination. If any of us are ever discriminated against, we already have tools to correct it, like the Department of Justice. And in schools, we have counselors and teachers. We don't need any more programs or regulations for any of this because most people are sincerely polite. Let's be strong and do like Oklahoma's governor just did. He banned the teaching of critical race theory in public schools. And what's crazy is even though the new law prohibits teaching of racist concepts, opponents of that law called it racist. This is insane. It's evil. In case you didn't know it, we lost more Americans in the Civil War than any other war. Why was that? It was to end slavery. Please check out the March issue of Imprimis from Hillsdale College. There's an awesome speech in it on critical race theory. And I just want to say thank you again, and God bless you all.
Our next speaker is Audrey Bruckner, followed by Marie, and then Nico Van Niekerk. Do we have Audrey? Via phone?
Go
ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay, I'm Audrey Bruckner from Thousand Oaks, and I just want to say good evening, everyone. I think we can all agree by now that our world has been turned upside down and inside out. We are currently engaged in a spiritual battle. One of the prominent strategies is to divide and conquer. Thousand Oaks is participating in this division on many levels, including allowing outside forces in to advocate for specific agendas. I do not consent to building high-rise office buildings and large apartment complexes in downtown Thousand Oaks. This issue needs to be voted on by all taxpaying citizens. I also do not consent to transforming our city into a smart city, which is a major tool for surveillance capitalism and a dystopian future. Kudos to Judy Bruce. Please do your research. Here are a few, authentic resources of value. Number one, movetheneedle.org. This is a local group and very active. Number two is CSP as in person, OA.org. That was CS as in Sam. This stands for Constitutional Sheriffs Peace Officers Association. More and more cities and counties are employing constitutional sheriffs to protect citizens' legal rights. Number 3 is drcharlieward.com, and that's drcharlieward.com. And he also has YouTubes and many archives. Number 4 is Dr. Dr. again, drtenpenny.com. Number 5 is naturalnews.com. And number 6 is michaeltellinger.com. He's a very respected researcher, and he has workable action plans for communities. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Anne Marie.
Hello, my name's.
Go ahead.
Excuse me. Hello, my name's Anne Marie. I'm from the Conejo Valley here. Hello, City Council members and Madame Mayor. I'm here tonight to speak to you about the Thousand Oaks General Plan. Nobody seems satisfied with the haphazard outcome of the surveys. Residents have been coming to you for weeks now, representing all areas of our city to ask for a new survey that will dictate a new general plan. This beautiful city deserves a fair shot. Nobody wants a new general plan, and we know that whatever is in the new GP will determine the future look of our city. We are happy with the way it is now. You have heard so many complaints, actually too many to list about the Lupi's restaurant build out. If that is an indication of what is to come within the next 30,000 units to be built, Thousand Oaks is literally going to be in dire straits. We cannot listen to a Berkeley graduate from Ramsey Consulting about what the future of our city looks like. 2,000 interviewees does not represent the 120,000 residents of Thousand Oaks. I am sure you have heard from hundreds of residents that don't want it at all. We need to go back to the drawing board, going back to the traffic nightmare created by Lupi's restaurant build out. My suggestion and caution, feared by a lot of other residents, is to increase traffic. Sacramento has allowed fewer parking for housing units if they have a percentage of low and very low income housing. By adding low and very low income housing, the builder can exceed the number of units zoned to make up the loss. What is that going to do to the already dense traffic problems from just a few units built on Thousand Oaks Boulevard? Sacramento requires the minimum number of housing units is 30 units per acre. It can go up to 45 housing units per acre. They are compelling new construction to be smaller, more dense units, thinking it will allow more housing to be built and get people to work where they live. What a traffic nightmare. Do you see why the survey is bogus and needs to be redone? The survey only gave us choices of build-outs along Thousand Oaks Boulevard, which is already highly congested in just one street with just one build-out. Do you see why we really need to engage the residents other than just here at City Council meetings? We have given up with the Planning Commission. They are not interested in us. They just want us to go away. Honestly, the problem is going to get way worse. Have you heard that there is talk of Newbury Park wanting to cede from Thousand Oaks? Our needs to be addressed so that you don't have a riot on your hands. Thank you for your time.
Beverly Wirtz is next, followed by Susan Klein. And our last speaker will be David Schechter, who had technical problems earlier. Beverly Wirtz.
Thank you, Mayor and fellow councilmen. I just want to address the young students that spoke at the last meeting about bullying. I'm sorry for their pain. I'm sorry for their suffering. Bullying is a serious offense, but complaining to our city council is not the right venue. They need to complain to their principal, to the school board that can implement maybe better protocols to help stop bullying in their schools. City council needs to focus on our limited water supply, our electrical grid, roads, traffic concerns, and helping small businesses reopen, not individual student complaints about bullying. These concerns need to be addressed elsewhere. Thank you.
Susan Klein, followed by David Schechter.
Your host doesn't start my video. Okay, sorry. Hello, Adam, that's Dandy Don you were thinking of, right? Dandy Don. Anyway, thank you kindly for including the people in this monumental plan for our city. As a 45-year resident, I have some grave concern about the general proposal you are considering. For a moment, allow me to go over the successful design of the Conejo Westlake to Newbury Park. My husband was a planner for a large portion of the city, and I understand how this remarkable community has thrived, and it continues to this day. We are a suburb with a village design, a Newtown community. The original Newtown community was in Western Virginia, and our planners consulted with the originals. Our small neighborhoods maintain the same village atmosphere as when it began. Our infrastructure, utilities are in need of updating and increased capacity. We are experiencing blackouts due to power shortages, and then we're asked to limit our usage at certain times. We have a fine city and county services, but the current natural growth shows they are not enough. Public transportation is a concern. An unnatural surge in population increases traffic problems. If they're planning on increasing public traffic to replace private cars, that limits people on employment opportunities outside certain areas. The core of dense development predates automobiles. The general plan proposal, including several thousand units, does not provide the infrastructure that would improve what we have or accomplish increased density as designed. TO is a suburb and is developed and grown as a thriving and traditional bedroom community. All planning has very specific codes, including no proposed amendment to land use elements in city general plan will be considered and approved until approved by a majority of the city voters at a general or specific election. That's in the code. I've distributed my talk so you can find it. It's not clear of what the intent is. What are they trying to accomplish? What city like TO or Westlake have been successful are they modeling their plan over? What is the projection for increased law enforcement? What are the demographics they're planning to serve? As the plan stands, it is unacceptable. It appears to be an attempt to transform our city rather than work with natural development as a diverse and thriving city.
Your time is up. Thank you. Our last speaker is David Schechter. Let's try again.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Great. So my name is David Schechter. I'm a 24-year resident of Newbury Park. All three of my kids went through the Conejo Valley school system. Thank you, Council, for this opportunity to address you this evening. The proposal to create a social justice commission is in fact motivated by greed, immaturity, and arrogance. The premise behind their demands is that the City Council is answerable to unsubstantiated emotional appeals. The residents of Thousand Oaks get to decide what is important to us, how we see the world, and what we value. The individuals with their baseless complaints do not. In particular, please question any assertion that the proposal represents a consensus among TO residents. No such consensus exists, and the proponents of a social justice commission have presented no evidence of such a consensus. If you look at the characteristics of our community, it is comprised of people who work hard, take care of our families, and practice personal responsibility. The arrogance I refer to is exemplified by reference in the proposal to influencing people's emotional consciousness. We are in charge of our emotions, not Resistance 805 and not anyone else, and our emotional life is none of their business. The individuals making these demands are neither our intellectual nor our moral betters. The City Council must not cave into demands on how to allocate our resources based on evidence-free assertions that dress themselves up as demands for something noble, when in point of fact, the proposal is based on nothing but selfishness and greed. I would add that the advocacy of diversity is phony and laughable because its approach actively discourages diversity with its one-sided, rigid proposals for how our city should function. We have seen these types of demands being made throughout the nation, and no good has come from any of it. Our city is a success story based on thoughtful planning, a commitment to personal responsibility, sound fiscal policy, and decisions and strategies that are based on facts and data, not childish emotions. In summary, our community is answerable to the individuals making arrogant demands to our city and our priorities. We have seen countless instances of police departments, mayors, and local governments caving in to immature individuals and their garden variety grievances. It never ends well. I pray that the City Council be guided by wisdom. Thank you.
And that was our last speaker for the evening. I'm going to our city manager to see whether there were any comments that you wanted to make.
Thanks, Mayor Bill de la Pena. Only comment is our over 18-month-long outreach process for the general plan in relation to the land use element will be culminating next week with the City Council study session and the subsequent week with Council's action on the item. So that's coming right up.
Thank you. And we will also share information pretty soon about capacity and so forth in the theater for in-person.
Yeah, we have information on our website, and we'll be putting out additional information next week. We do encourage, though, participation virtually. There will be limitations associated with capacity in the chambers based on state regulations, and so for ease of participation, we encourage people to do that, to choose virtual first. Thanks.
Thank you. And I will now go to the consent calendar. Are there any items which my colleagues would like to pull?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Jones.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask a couple of questions about item F with the Wendy Drive pedestrian crossing. If nobody else has any concerns, I'll move the balance of the consent calendar.
We have a motion to approve the consent calendar minus item F. All right, Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Adam?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember McNamee?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Engler?
Yes.
And Mayor Bill de la Pena?
Yes.
And that motion carries 5-0.
Mr. Jones?
Yes, I just like the city engineer to describe what all will be put in there at Wendy and Charlotte, along with the stripes on the ground. Are there warning signals and so forth about the pedestrian crossing?
Yes, my pleasure. Good evening, Mayor Bill de la Pena and council members. This is Nader Haidari, the city engineer. And yes, this is going to be a more modern and crosswalk built to the newest standards. And so it's going to be much more than just striping across the road. It's going to involve advanced beacon notifications, lighting, and several other elements, yield signs, and signage that helps alert the cars to the upcoming crosswalk well in advance.
So the drivers on Wendy will be well aware, I take it from all that there's a crosswalk right ahead.
Yes, this is going to be similar in nature to some of the newer crosswalks that we've built on Thousand Oaks Boulevard over the last 18 months. It's not going to have all of the features and not going to have the center refuge island because of the ability. We want to preserve the ability to still turn left into the neighborhood, but it's still going to have many of the other elements that make those crosswalks very visible.
Well, that's reassuring. Thank you. I'll move that item then, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jones moves item 7F. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Adam?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember McNamee?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Engler?
Yes.
And Mayor Bill De La Pena?
Yes.
And that motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. We're now moving to item 8, which is a public hearing about our Community Development Block Grant Action Plan. And I will have our city clerk open this hearing.
Hearing advertised as required by law is open to consider agenda item 8A, the 2021-22 Community Development Block Grant Action Plan. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. 2 individuals have presented speaker cards, and pursuant to council standards, each speaker will have 5 minutes.
Thank you. The presentation will be made by our Community Development Analyst, Lynn Oshida. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the city's public hearing on the proposed use of Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. The CDBG funds will be used to benefit low-income Thousand Oaks residents. City staff is requesting council approval on the HUD documents. The 2021 CDBG Action Plan was prepared in consultation with the public and local stakeholders, and a copy of the draft document was posted to the city's website for public review prior to tonight's meeting. The CDBG grant amount fluctuates from year to year. In 2021, the CDBG grant amount is approximately $573,000, which is a decrease of 0.83% from last year's CDBG entitlement. The 2021 CDBG Action Plan was prepared with community outreach. A community needs assessment and notice of application were conducted in January and February of 2021. The city received 4 housing rehabilitation applications and 15 public services applications. The draft action plan was posted on the city's website for 30 days. All comments were received during this period. In addition to comments that are here tonight, we will include them into the final action plan document, which will be submitted to HUD. This slide shows the breakdown of the allocations. As you can see, CDBG funds are focused on housing rehabilitation and public services. Agencies that are being recommended for CDBG funds have HUD experience and are capable of complying with the HUD regulations. The multifamily rehabilitation activities will benefit 112 low-income units. The Area Housing Authority's project involves replacing 3 roofs at Los Arbores Apartments and a CDBG grant of $180,000. The Many Mansions project involves concrete and asphalt repairs at Shadow Hills Apartments and a CDBG grant of $47,000. The single-family rehabilitation activities will benefit 10 low-income units. Both Habitat for Humanity and SAFE will each receive a CDBG grant of $75,000 to run their own mobile home repair program. This slide lists the 6 social services agencies and program activities that are being recommended for CDBG funding. These programs will benefit over 1,000 low-income Thousand Oaks residents. The action plan budget includes staff costs to ensure CDBG programs are in compliance with HUD regulations and the County of Ventura's fair housing contract. With City Council approval tonight, the County of Ventura will submit to HUD the finalized 2021 CDBG action plan and grant agreement of $537,100. This concludes the slide presentation, and staff is available to respond to your questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this presentation. Are there any questions by my colleagues regarding this particular item, 8? I don't see if we could get rid of the slide 10 recommendations so I can see my colleagues. Thank you so much. Mayor Pro Tem Engler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple quick questions on the way you went about awarding the very deserving recipients. The committee met on this, of course. Is there a matrix by which they work? How do they arrive at their decision?
Sure. So the CDBG review committee had reviewed all the applications, and in your supplemental packet, there is the summary of that report from the committee. And they scored and ranked all the applications using a checklist and a scorecard. And then based on their score, they were ranked.
So you did it in the most objective way as you could?
Yes, this was a very objective way of reviewing the applications.
And then another question I had for you, is contact made with the groups that do not receive the award, advising them as to perhaps what they could do better next time to be able to qualify?
So all the applicants was notified when the CDBG action plan was available for a 30-day public review. Some of these applicants did contact me asking them about their application, and some of them did ask me, why they're not being recommended. And as staff, I did respond back to the inquiries. And I do also know that some other staff members did as well.
So feedback was available to the
Yes.
non-recipients as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councilmember McNamee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question for you on number 6, County of Ventura. You have your RAIN facility for homeless clients. Who are the 4 homeless clients? If you could elaborate a little bit more, I'd appreciate it. And I do have, Madam Mayor, one more question after this.
Okay. It was kind of hard to hear your question, but your question was about the RAIN facility and those who are participating in the RAIN facility. Was that your?
Great question. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
The question is, you have RAIN facility for homeless clients. I just wondered if you could elaborate as to what are those 4 homeless clients. I'm not sure what that is.
Sure. So the RAIN facility is located near Camarillo, and they are a transitional type of housing or shelter program. For our CDBG contract, they would need to spend the specific money on a Thousand Oaks homeless person. So the funds aren't designated to anyone throughout the county, but it needs to be specifically to a Thousand Oaks person who's homeless.
Excellent. Thank you. And I have one other question, Madam Mayor, and this is for our Legal Eagle expert. If I can pose this question to you, Ms. Noonan. The Westminster Free Clinic, they were asking for $15,000 and recommendation by staff is $10,000. Here's my conflict question. I volunteer my clinical skills there at the Westminster Free Clinic. Should I recuse myself for that one particular item but vote on the rest? How should I handle this given my relationship with the clinic?
So, okay, want to make sure I'm not on mute. So typically you would recuse yourself from the entire vote, and that's because not voting for one has an impact on the other financial awards for the other ones. That's typically what I would advise, but you're not receiving any income though, right?
No, I'm not. It's all volunteer out of my
All
pocket.
volunteer. Since it's all volunteer, you don't have a financial conflict of interest, so you could participate and you could just recuse yourself on that one thing if you wanted to.
I always appreciate your legal expert opinion. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Then I will go to our two speakers. Or actually, we're down to one now. I believe Mr. Bud McGehee. Is he with us?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening. Actually, my name is Michael Nye. Mr. McGee couldn't make it this evening at the last minute. Michael Nye, Executive Director with the Area Housing Authority, the County of Ventura. Good evening, Mayor and Council staff. On behalf of Mr. McGee and the rest of the staff and our residents at Los Arboles, we wanted to thank you for the consideration of the $180,000 in order to assist us in replacing roofs on 3 of the buildings out at Los Arboles. This project receives no other subsidy, so it is tremendous assistance for you to participate, and we greatly appreciate the partnership with the City of Thousand Oaks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I do have a question for staff. When did the committee meet to evaluate all the applications, and when were the applicants notified that they did receive an award or a grant?
Sure. So the committee met on March 2nd and March 3rd, and all the applicants let's see. All the applicants was notified at the end of March that the CDBG action plan was available for public review. And in that had the applicants that were going to be recommended for funding.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is because there were some requests coming in way after that that could not be considered for this particular process. Okay. Thank you very much. And if there are no other questions, I'm looking for a motion.
Madam Mayor, Bob Engler, I so
Close the
move.
hearing.
Oh, first I need to close the public hearing. Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem Engler.
I was going to make the motion, Madam Mayor, but if you need to close the hearing, go ahead.
I just did. Yes, go ahead. Hearing is closed. Go
I
ahead.
move the acceptance of the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Adam?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember McNamee?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Engler?
Yes.
And Mayor Bill De La Pena?
Yes.
And that motion carries 5-0.
Excellent. Thank you. We now move on to our study session of the proposed 21, 22, and 23 operating budget. So I believe that this will be presented by our Finance Director, Jamie Boscarino. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council members. We are here tonight to discuss the proposed fiscal year 2021-22 and fiscal year 22-23 operating budget. Department heads are here as well and available to answer any questions at the conclusion of my presentation. The purpose of tonight's operating budget study session is for a staff presentation to review the 2-year proposed operating budget. As this is a study session, there will be time after the presentation for City Council discussion and any public comments. The study session tonight is the third and final study session of the biennial budget process for this year. We previously discussed the user fees in the CIP budget. The user fees were also adopted in April as part of the public hearing. The operating budget is actually 2 one-year budgets, one for fiscal year 2021-22 and one for fiscal year 22-23. Once again, staff incorporated community engagement as part of the budget process. We also ensured that funds were set aside during the budget process to work towards City Council's goals and priorities for fiscal year 2021-22. The operating budget process was kicked off in December with a citywide budget meeting to go over the budget process, the budget theme, and the general state of the city's finances to set the tone for departments to prepare their budget requests. Departments then prepared their budgets between January and February, when the finance budget team then met with each individual department to review their budget line item by line item. Any increases over the current budget had to be justified. And then staff met with the Finance Audit Committee on May 3rd to review the proposed budget. Our recommendation tonight is to set June 8th as the public hearing date. Throughout this process, staff has done budget engagement and outreach. In the past budget cycle, staff has focused their engagement and outreach efforts on a combination of both online and in-person engagement. Obviously, during COVID, staff was unable to do in-person engagement. A new budget website was created, www.tobudget.org. The goal was to help residents gain a basic understanding of the municipal budget process, to try to take the mystery out of the budget. We had close to 1,000 hits to our budget site so far. Staff also relied heavily on social media to engage the public through Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Nextdoor posts. And we also did ads in the City Scene newsletter. We wanted to direct the public to our budget website, provide education, and get feedback through our budget survey. Staff created how high our quality of life is connected to community engagement, fiscal responsibility, and smart project implementation. For the first time this year, we created the budget in a box trivia series as a fun and unique way to provide information to the public about the city. These videos had the highest engagement from the public. Our online budget engagement survey was focused at just being a short and quick survey that the public could take in order for staff to get a high-level understanding in combination with the community attitude survey of what residents' priorities are. This was a small sample size of just under 200 responses, and of course, it's not statistically valid like our community attitude survey. For the top 3 priorities question, the highest priority of respondents was to address local homelessness, mental health, with improving infrastructure and investing in environmental sustainability, almost tied at 82 and 83 responses. Each one of the top 3 are incorporated into our proposed budget with various projects to meet these priorities. The majority of the responses in the other category were for supporting affordable housing efforts, which is also included in our draft budget. Moving on. Ranking city services on low to high priority, the services ranked with the most high priority answers were retaining and engaging the number of quality jobs in Thousand Oaks, acquiring and preserving open space, and supporting homelessness services. The final question is similar to that included in the community attitude survey, asking how satisfied the public is with the city providing services. The public continues to be highly satisfied with the provision of city services. The library had the highest rating, and considering the libraries were physically closed to in-person services for approximately a year, this is a testament to our library staff and their ability to continue to provide services to the public through curbside services and virtual programming throughout the pandemic. We will now get into the development of the citywide budget. Preparing the city's budget is distinctly unique every 2 years. The preparation of this budget was, of course, unlike any other in that it was developed during a pandemic with much uncertainty. Despite that, it is clear that the city remains fiscally strong, thanks to the strong leadership of City Council and management. The city has a biennial budget process, so once every 2 years, we prepare 2 one-year budgets for City Council adoption. Because of the uncertainty of how quickly life will resume some semblance of normalcy, the budget includes conservative estimates and a prudent spending plan. Past strong financial results have enabled the city to not only get through this pandemic in a sound financial position, but present a budget that invests significantly in our community over the next 2 years. The budget is structurally balanced, which means that ongoing revenues are sufficient to cover ongoing expenditures. Reserves in the general fund support CIP projects and any one-time initiatives. There's no increase to the citywide position count of 381, although there are proposed realignment of positions to better meet current and future needs. The budget theme this cycle was geared towards our Moving TO initiative, with a focus on workplace transformation, financial resilience, and technology investment and innovation. As part of workplace transformation, vacant budgeted positions were realigned to more adequately meet current and future needs and services. Staff wants to provide services as efficiently and effectively as possible. So, for example, IT services were centralized within the finance department. Also included is budget for staff training. A new initiative that was kicked off a couple weeks ago was DIBS, Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging. Staff continued its longstanding focus on fiscal sustainability throughout the budget process by continuing a focus on long-term strategies. Technology innovation continues to advance at breathtaking speeds and revolutionizes the way people work and provide services. Funding is included in the budget for advancing our efforts in this area, including a new city website that will be ADA compliant and specifically including additional funding for cybersecurity efforts. As discussed at the March goal setting, the American Rescue Plan that was passed is enabling the city to respond, rebuild, and recover with over $20 million in one-time strategic investments in the community in 6 focused areas, including affordable housing, economic development, homelessness, infrastructure, arts, culture, nonprofits, and parks and recreation. The majority of the investment was already discussed and included in the CIP budget, but we are also proposing a one-time $1 million grant program aimed towards the arts, culture, nonprofit, and social services community. The structure of this grant program will be developed over the coming months with the Finance Audit Committee and brought forth to City Council at a later date. City Council established its top priorities for the first year of the city's budget, which are listed here. Funds have been set aside as necessary to achieve Council's top priorities, including $10 million in general fund support for affordable housing and homelessness efforts, $5 million towards deferred street maintenance, a new $1 million one-time grant program, which I just mentioned, outreach to businesses on the new waste hauler implementation, just to name a few. Also, a new city goal was adopted. With this being a new City Council goal, we are looking into ways in which we can support this goal at a staff level. I just mentioned staff training with the new DIBS initiative, also our website update, and we're also including translation or language access services for city meetings. We also have a position that is dedicated to be a liaison for neighborhood and social services. The proposed fiscal year 2021-22 citywide budget is $243.4 million. The majority of the budget is in the city's general fund, water fund, and wastewater fund. The city is required to budget appropriations and revenue in individual funds. Then the proposed fiscal year 2022-23 citywide budget is slightly lower at $229.4 million. And that's because of some of those major one-time initiatives that I talked about that are in the first year. Viewing the proposed budget by category, you can see the largest budget category is maintenance and operations, which is primarily comprised of enterprise fund budget at almost 1/3 of the citywide budget. Salaries and benefits are next at about 1/4 of the citywide budget. Debt service is the smallest percentage of the citywide budget at just $3 million, split between the library debt and wastewater debt. And as I'll mention later on, our wastewater debt will actually be fully repaid in fiscal year 22-23. For fiscal year 22-23, the allocations by category are similar. However, there is less in the CIP budget in the second year. I'll now review the city's major funds, starting with the general fund. The city's general fund is the city's only discretionary fund, and that revenues can be used for any purpose. The proposed budget is considered a balanced budget in that ongoing operating revenues are greater than ongoing operating expenditures. There is revenue from the American Rescue Plan included in the first year of the budget. As mentioned, we are also proposing a one-time $1 million city grant program in the first year. There's also additional funding for technology efforts, as I mentioned, including cybersecurity, a movement from the existing Granicus agenda management system to a more modern system with PrimeGov, which will also allow for closed captioning of all of our public meetings, an upgraded public website, which will be fully ADA compliant, and increased funding for translation services. Below the line, which are one-time expenditures included in the CIP budget, that's not included in the calculation of whether the city has a balanced budget, as they are paid for with existing reserves. The budget for affordable housing and homelessness efforts in the city is meant to be flexible in order for City Council and the staff to be able to quickly respond to opportunities that may arise and leverage state and federal funding as well. The past 10 years of actuals, current projections for this fiscal year, and the proposed budget for the next 2 years is shown on this chart. we're preliminary projecting that the general fund will experience an increase in fund balance for fiscal year 2021, which is the current fiscal year. It's evident in this graph the strong financial position the city is currently in. Despite the growth, we have maintained the position count, made significant one-time investments in the community over the past several years, and also made strategic financial sustainability decisions. These past decisions have enabled the city to be in a position this budget cycle to increase our investment in the community. The proposed general fund budget for fiscal year 2021-22 is $92.9 million. As you can see, the majority of the revenue is from 3 revenue sources: sales tax at over 1/3 of revenue, and then property tax and property tax in lieu of vehicle license fee revenue. The proposed general fund fiscal year 2022-23 budget is slightly higher at $93.3 million. Focusing on general fund revenue, we anticipate sales tax to increase each year as we are coming out of the pandemic and businesses continue to recover. Property tax continues to increase with assessed valuations increasing and the median home price continuing to rise. Charges for services is projecting an increase each year, with a larger increase in the first year due to development projects that have already received pre-screen approval. Franchise fees are expected to decrease slightly the first year due to the move to our new waste hauler contract with lower residential rates, offset by increases in utilities fees. Licenses and permits are expected to decline the first year due to the cost of lumber and other construction materials greatly increasing. Transient occupancy tax is projected to increase significantly both years as the economy starts to rebound and the public feels safer traveling. Use of money is projected to decline in the first year due to a decrease in rates. Revenue from other agencies shows large decreases each year as the American Rescue Plan revenue is receded here and is higher in the projected fiscal year 2021 than fiscal year 21-22, and no revenue in fiscal year 22-23. Other revenue shows a decline in the first year due to settlement revenue we received this fiscal year. Transfers in is projected to increase each year due to the rebounding price of gas and people on the road, as the bulk of the transfer in is from gas tax to pay for project engineers. So overall revenue is anticipated to slightly increase each year. As mentioned, sales tax is the city's largest revenue source. Here you can see how that 7 1/4 sales tax is divided. And the city, of course, has the lowest sales tax in the state. Many other cities throughout the state have increased their sales tax with add-ons above that 7 1/4%. The state's general fund gets the largest share, with Ventura County Health and Welfare receiving the next largest share. The city actually receives about 13% of the dollar, so a small portion of the sales tax paid in Thousand Oaks actually directly comes back to the city to be spent on city services. The 10-year sales tax revenue history is presented in this chart. There has been a steady increase with some fluctuations here and there. There's also a continued switch from point of sales transactions at brick and mortar stores to online retailers, or simply online on a store's website. And that negatively impacts our point of sales revenue as the revenue goes into the county pool and is apportioned out to all cities instead of coming back directly to us. Or for instance, it goes to a fulfillment center city and doesn't come back to the city at all. The city does work with a consultant who regularly monitors the city's sales tax and ensures that all sales tax generated in the city is properly being allocated to the city. As we evaluate online sales and its impact on sales tax revenue, it's evident that the pandemic drove sales even faster online as store closures and restrictions limited abilities and willingness for in-store shopping. We only anticipate this trend to further continue as the public enjoys the ease and convenience of being able to purchase almost anything from anywhere and have it show up on your doorstep the next day. In looking at property tax, the city actually incorporated without a general municipal property tax, and we now receive a very small share called TEA, or tax equity allocation. The bulk of the property tax from Thousand Oaks residents goes to schools, the county, the fire district, and CRPD. In fiscal year 1920, the city experienced a sharp increase in property tax revenue. This was due to a correction in the TEA calculation by the county, which resulted in the city receiving a larger share of property tax, as well as a one-time payment for three years worth of past misallocations. This current year, the county revised how it was distributing pass-through payments, which increased the total property tax the city is anticipated to receive this year. These corrections moving forward lead to the city receiving a greater share of property tax. For general fund expenditures, proposed budget for fiscal year 21-22 is $105.9 million. The largest two expenditures are salaries and benefits at 34% of the budget and police services at 30% of the budget. The proposed budget for fiscal year 22-23 is a decrease to $96.02 million, primarily due to the decrease in capital from $16.5 million to $2.1 million. And that's because we discussed those one-time projects such as affordable housing and homelessness in that first year of the budget. Salaries and benefits costs are proposed with moderate increases each year. Police services increases are based on the contract rate increases, as well as maintenance and operation costs increasing due to no longer receiving asset seizure funds to pay for police costs. Maintenance and operations increase in the first year is due to a variety of factors, including the $1 million one-time grant program, increase in technology costs in the first year, and an increase in funding to CRPD for additional rangers for COSCA. Capital improvements is increasing in the first year due to proposed projects as discussed during the CIP study session. Again, the $10 million for homelessness and affordable housing projects that we've talked about. Transfers out is increasing due to the transfer for streets. The city and county sheriff have a close working relationship and strong partnership to provide quality police services to the public. Police costs have varied over the past 10 years, and police costs are actually projected to decrease this current fiscal year to $29.6 million. This is primarily due to the county's responsible pension management and their ability to pay off a portion of their unfunded pension liability. The county thus passed this savings on to its contract cities. The 6.7% increase in the first year is actually comparing our projected actuals this year to the proposed budget. Just like the city does, the county proposes rates based off of being fully staffed the entire year. Thus, actuals will likely come in well under budget due to various vacancies throughout the year. The general fund has consistently supported other funds, including paying for our library debt, supporting library capital, supporting stormwater program, and supporting open space if there's a surplus. This support is proposed to continue during this budget cycle with the addition of support for streets and transportation in order to not only maintain the necessary funding for pavement maintenance, but strategically target our deferred street maintenance. Although the pandemic changed how our libraries provided services over the past year, our staff quickly adapted to provide curbside services and virtual programming to the community. The Thousand Oaks Library recently reopened in a safe manner to the public, and the Newberry Park Library is set to reopen in the near future. The library fund proposed budget is an increase in operating expenditures in comparison to projected actuals. However, the library experienced savings due to its physical closure this past year. There are several CIP projects that are currently proposed, such as a solar project and a remodel of the interior spaces of the libraries to provide services in a new way that meets current and future needs of the public. The general fund support being proposed is to pay for these capital projects. Other governmental funds include the city's lighting and landscape assessment district funds and the stormwater fund. Although we do budget for streets improvements, capital projects, and housing, those funds are primarily CIP driven and were thus discussed during the CIP study session, so I'm not going to repeat them during this discussion tonight. The lighting fund is responsible for the maintenance and operation of the city's traffic signal, safety lighting, and street lights. Revenue is primarily from the lighting special assessment and general ad valorem property tax. Revenue is projected to be flat. The city is restricted by how much the special assessment can increase annually. Operating expenditures are budgeted to slightly decrease in the first year. There is approximately $700,000 proposed each year in the CIP projects in order to maintain the city's traffic signals. Although there is adequate fund balance in the fund to pay for these projects, without future revenue increases or expenditure decreases, the city's general fund will have to support the lighting fund in the near future. The city's landscaping assessment district fund is responsible for the maintenance and improvement of landscaping throughout landscape assessment districts. Approximately 43% of parcels are in a landscape assessment district throughout the city. Much as the lighting fund, the landscaping fund primarily receives revenue through special assessments on the property tax bill and also a general ad valorem property tax. Operating expenditures are budgeted to increase due primarily to water costs rising and contract maintenance costs rising. The landscaping fund currently has sufficient fund balance to pay for the capital improvements, and the fund is structurally balanced with operating revenue exceeding operating expenditures. Assessments have been set to fund the capital projects as well as the operations of the district. The city stormwater fund is responsible for the operation and maintenance of the city stormwater program in compliance with the countywide NPDES permit. The two revenue sources are a countywide special assessment, which has not been increased since 1990s, and any change in that rate would require action from the county. The other revenue source is sales of reclaimed water. As you can see, the general fund supports the stormwater program. In addition, this is the first budget where the solid waste management fee will be utilized to fund a portion of the city's stormwater program as well. The ability to fund this program is not unique to Thousand Oaks and is a challenge that every city is dealing with. Staff stays abreast of grant opportunities and statewide regulatory discussion regarding stormwater programs. Moving to the city's enterprise funds, which operate like a business in that they charge fees to support their operations. The city has 6 enterprise funds: our water fund, wastewater fund, solid waste fund, transportation fund, theaters fund, and golf course fund. The city's water fund is responsible for delivering water to approximately 1/3 of the city, or over 16,000 customers. There are 2 other water purveyors in town that supply water to the rest of the city. Revenue is primarily from water sales and base charges. Staff has a focus on sustainability of our water system long-term and reducing the reliance on imported water as we are, it seems, perennial drought conditions in Southern California. Proposed operating revenues have an increase each year due to expected increase from Callegas that are passed through to customers. Operating expenses are primarily due to increases in salaries and benefits and the purchase of water from Callegas. As discussed at the CIP study session, the water fund has many significant projects planned for the next 2 years, including reservoir maintenance and the Los Robles groundwater treatment project, of which grant revenue is anticipated to pay for a portion of the project. The water fund has been setting aside reserves over the past several years to fund the planned CIP projects. Staff will be updating the water financial plans and developing rates and will return this fall to City Council. The city's wastewater fund is responsible for the treatment of wastewater that flows through to the city's Hill Canyon wastewater treatment plant, which treats up to 10 million gallons per day and serves more than 37,000 accounts. Revenue is primarily from service charges. The proposed budget includes a modest increase in operating revenues. Overall, revenues are slightly down due to high connection fee revenue in past years that is not anticipated next year. Proposed operating expenses are projected to increase based on an increase in salaries and benefits costs and increases in maintenance and operations. As discussed at the CIP study session, the wastewater fund also has many significant projects planned for the next 2 years, especially at the treatment plant. Much like the water fund, the wastewater fund has been setting aside reserves over the past several years to fund the planned CIP projects. Staff will also be updating our wastewater financial plans and developing rates, and will return this fall to City Council with our water financial plans and rates. This is the final budget cycle, as I mentioned earlier, that has debt service, as it will be paid off in December of 2022. And considering the value of the city's wastewater treatment plant and overall collection system, that is a huge accomplishment of the city to finally be debt-free in a year and a half. The city's solid waste fund is responsible for a variety of programs, including our recycling program, operation of our household hazardous waste facility, sustainability efforts, our community enhancement grant program, and Adopt a Highway. Revenues are primarily from commercial and residential solid waste management fees and grants. The proposed budget for the solid waste fund includes increases to operating revenues based on our new waste hauler contract and subsequent increase in residential solid waste management fee revenue. Operating expenses are increased based primarily on an increase in operating costs for our household hazardous waste facility. No capital improvements. You see a slight 0.1 there, but it's just for our solar project. So virtually no capital improvements are planned. The city's transportation fund is responsible for providing bus and dial-a-ride services in the city. In addition, the city is the designated operator for the East County Transit Alliance, as well as contracts with various other agencies to provide bus and dial ride services. Revenues are primarily from state and federal sources. Various capital projects are proposed as part of the CIP budget and will not move forward without adequate grant funding. In addition, long-term planning is continuing about the future of transit services countywide. The Transportation Fund is projected to have decreased revenues in fiscal year 21-22 due to additional federal COVID stimulus funding received in this current year that we do not anticipate receiving again. Operating expenses are anticipated to increase based on an increase in the contract cost with MV Transportation. Typically, the city's transit program is required to meet fare box ratios of 20% for bus and 10% for dial-a-ride. Due to the pandemic, that requirement was eliminated last year and this year. It is anticipated our program will not have to meet the requirement in fiscal year 21-22 as well, although a transfer is currently budgeted in fiscal year 22-23 from the general fund in case that requirement is not waived in the second year of the budget. The Golf Course Fund is responsible for the operations and maintenance of the Los Robles Greens Golf Course and banquet facilities and is managed through a management agreement with Arcus Golf. The golf course was significantly impacted by the pandemic. With an inability to host private events, food and beverage revenue was greatly decreased over the past year. On the positive side, golf revenue greatly increased due to the public wanting to do outdoor activities. With restrictions lifting, revenue is expected to increase. Fiscal year 21-22 revenue is slightly higher due to revenue from the American Rescue Plan to reimburse the golf course fund for its food and beverage revenue losses that were sustained due to the pandemic. With the event spaces able to reopen, there will be a corresponding increase in expenses. The city's theaters fund is responsible for the operations of the city's 1,800-seat Fred Cavley Theater and the 400-seat Janet and Ray Sher Forum. The COVID pandemic closed the city's theaters to performances for over a year, closing last March. The good news is that live performance theaters are finally allowed to reopen with capacity restrictions. The first show is scheduled upcoming soon with Melissa Manchester. However, there is still a great amount of uncertainty over the next 2 years with the budget. The revenue proposed in fiscal year 21-22 is higher due to receipt of the American Rescue Plan stimulus funding. This revenue will help support the theater in reopening safely for our patrons, providing a higher level of security and cleaning. It will also be able to pay for staff required to operate safely and offset revenue losses that it experienced. There is significant uncertainty in the willingness of the public to return to indoor live performance venues, performers to return indoors, and how quickly we will be able to operate at full capacity. As I mentioned, expenses are higher due to increased cost for cleaning and security to open, operate, and safely. So overall, Theaters Fund is a conservative estimate, and we do not anticipate any support from the general fund moving forward in this current budget. In summary, I want to reiterate the proposed budget is structurally balanced and represents a fiscally sustainable spending plan for the next 2 years, while at the same time significantly reinvesting back into our community. There is, of course, uncertainty as we are emerging out of the COVID pandemic, and thus we have conservative revenue estimates. And we're aware of some of the challenges in lighting and stormwater, with staff focused on strategies to address these. We continue to be proactive in our fiscal management and focused on the long term. And overall, this is a really positive budget for the city. And there are certainly agencies across the state that are not in the position that our city is in, where we are able to significantly reinvest in our community coming out of this pandemic. So with that, I'm grateful for the leadership from our city council and staff. And our recommendations are to receive information on the proposed budget and to schedule a public hearing for June 8th, 2021 for the review and adoption of our fiscal year 2021-22 and fiscal year 2022-23 operating and CIP budget. I want to thank city staff on the development of the budget, especially our finance team led by our budget officer, Brent Sakaida, and Deputy Finance Director, Carrie Matson. Staff from each department are available for questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Boscarino. Thank you for giving the council credit for this, but you know what? We are not the ones crunching the numbers. You and your staff are. And so all the credit goes to your team, to you and your team. This is an exemplary presentation. I really appreciate it very much. We don't have any public speakers. We do have a couple of questions from residents, however, but I wanted to see my colleagues, what they have to say or ask. Let me see. Councilmember McNamee, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Jamie, first off, I would like to say thank you for the superb job you do in keeping this budget balanced, intact, meeting the city's needs. You and your staff should be applauded for the terrific effort you have done. I also applaud your effort to keep sales tax at a minimum, because by doing so, it allows the money to flow through our economy here locally without being taken out of the economy, which slows down the exchange of product and service. And through that, we actually increase the amount of sales tax revenue we obtain. So I appreciate your doing that, and I applaud that approach by keeping sales tax down. Second is, I'm a very strong supporter of the libraries. I'm glad to see that they're on good footing. A strong educational system is dependent on libraries, and your continued effort to make certain they're funded for anything that we need to do in the shortfall is greatly appreciated. Question for you, Jamie, and I have one more after that. Jamie, one of the approaches I'm using to help Thousand Oaks get independent of Los Angeles Water and help lower our water rates is water reuse. We've discussed that in previous meetings. The water utility manager, public utilities manager, Mr. Cliff Finley, and I are working on that. He's come up with a brilliant plan that we're going to see if that actually pencils out. But the next other side of that coin, if I may say, is stormwater. And I'd like to approach him and start looking at our stormwater retention ability to capture that stormwater and reuse it. I see that's a small part of our budget. If we want to move forward with any type of stormwater development for retaining that water for later use, whereabouts in that budget will that type of funding come from?
So the funding for our stormwater program, since it's not fully funded, would come from our city's general fund if we wanted to add any additional CIP projects to address those types of issues that you've raised. We certainly are well aware of the challenges that funding our permit requirements are currently. So I know staff has been talking with you, and we welcome any ideas that you may have that would help out our stormwater program and recapture rain and those sort of creative ideas. So if those projects were to come to fruition, it would be funded by our city's general fund.
I would love to see our ability to get independent of Los Angeles Water just through the stormwater and our reuse, but also lower our water rates and distribution rates so we keep the money here in Thousand Oaks to allow product and service to be exchanged among our residents. And the last question I have is for our wonderful police chief. Chief Freihoff, I have a question here for you and an observation. With my work in the community with our high school students and college students, they were sharing with me their understanding of encounters with the police officer. And my work as a retired reserve officer, I can tell you that they did not have an understanding of their legal obligations and what to do to keep themselves safe when working with and encountering a police officer. And I asked them the questions about going through middle school and high school. Have you had a police officer come into your classroom or in the auditorium to explain what actions you should take and not take when meeting an officer, so that way everyone is safe and everyone winds up with a good outcome here? Because if you look at the studies, the situations that go south and people are killed or injured, it's usually because that suspect is 8 times greater aggressiveness, not complying with orders or commands, that the officer is concerned about his safety, his partner's safety, and the public safety. And yet our high school students and middle school students, I'm finding, are not having that instruction as part of the school encounter, whether it be public school or private school. Do we have officers on site at the high schools? Do they get into the middle schools? Are they available for the private schools if requested to explain to them the Constitution, the rules of engagement, how to meet and talk with an officer? give me some updates. And is that happening? Because the students are telling me that it's not. And I'd like to see that happen in our high schools, please.
Thank you, Councilmember McNamee. Great questions. So we do have 3 school resource officers who are paid for by the city, and we provide services to all the schools within the city of Thousand Oaks, private and public both. Those SROs are available to have discussions with our youth regarding their requirements to comply with law enforcement under certain circumstances, as well as ways to have that interaction go as best as possible. We have a great relationship with our school district, and we have for many years since we transitioned from our DARE program to a school resource officer program. The officers are on campus. They typically spend the majority of their time at high school, but they are also floating between the middle schools and elementary schools as needed, and sometimes just to say hi and be visible to help establish that positive relationship between our officers and those members in our community. I've also been meeting with our youth commission, the student district advisory committee, currently on Zoom to talk about those relationships and how we interact with our community and what the expectations are. I definitely would like the opportunity to continue to have those discussions at the school level, whether it's through an assembly or whatever the school district sees appropriate, to help make sure that the encounters that our public is having with law enforcement have the best possible outcome for all people. So thank you very much for your question. Did I answer your questions, Councilmember?
Yes, just a follow-up comment and perhaps a question in here is that what I'm hearing is that as of right now, the school resource officer is not invited into a class assembly to make a presentation about the role of the police officer, what to do when you're stopped by a police officer, what you're constitutionally required to do, and how to behave so that way everyone is safe. What I'm hearing from you that that's not currently taking place. And if that is a correct statement, I'd like to see our council move forward with encouraging Conejo Valley School Board to allow these school resource officers in there to do a organized presentation to that effect, because we may be saving a life here by a misunderstanding of a high school, middle school student not understanding their obligation when encountering a police officer. And this could be averted by allowing such assembly to take place either in the individual classroom or in a large assembly room where the officer has the ability to explain what the role is of the police officer and the student when they're being questioned. I'd like our council members to weigh in on this if you think this is something that will save a life, and that our officers should be at the Conejo Valley School Board approaching them to say, let our officers into the classroom to discuss this so we can save a life. Officer?
No, you're correct. For this last year in particular, obviously, because the school was out of session for traditional means, but I will work with the school district to ensure that they are giving us that opportunity. Like I said, I have a very good relationship with the superintendent, and I'll make it known that we're available to help them in that regard. I don't know that needs to come from the council. I'm confident that I can make that request. Obviously, with what has occurred over the past year, I think it's really important for law enforcement to have a much more proactive conversation with our community members on what the requirements are of our community and how we can best be able to provide great police service equally to everybody in our community to keep everybody safe. But I'm confident that we can get that done with the superintendent, and I'll make sure that we are making that known to our private schools as well, that we're here to support them too.
Chief, I appreciate what you do and your officers. It's a tribute to not only the training of your officers and how they interact with our community, but it's also attributed to the community members who respect you and your officers and try to help you keep our cities safe. And with that, I yield back to our mayor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember McNamee. As Chief Fryhoff stated, this probably does not require council consideration or direction. I do have a question, however, for our finance director. The SRO costs, are they school resources officers? Are they shared with the school district? I would imagine that cost, the city's portion, is already included in the budget for the police.
Yeah, so school resource officers, the budget is fully paid for by the city. The school district does not pay for the school resource officers at all, and it is included in our proposed budget.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions from my colleagues? I'm looking at my little screen here. Mr.
Madam
Adam
Mayor.
or Mr. Jones, go ahead.
Just a couple of general questions to follow up to that. Do we still pay for the crossing guards at schools? I know we did a long time ago.
Yes, we do pay for the crossing guard program that is provided at crosswalks at schools.
Jamie, I'd like to compliment you on this presentation and the material that was in the packet. If I can understand it, it's easy to understand. And I love your breakdown of the various taxes and the explanations of what each one does and how the other parts of the budget are financed. Just a general question, since we're a low tax city, which means that we don't get as much of the property tax as we were if we were a normal property tax city, does that free up any of the funds that might otherwise go to us for our local entities, CRPD and CVUSD? In other words, do they get any additional property tax money because we don't get as much as we could?
So, I mean, it's a zero-sum game, right? There's a certain dollar amount of property tax that our residents pay. And because we get a smaller share of that, then yes, the school district gets a larger share, CRPD gets a larger share, our library gets a larger share, because it all has to be distributed out some way. So yeah, the other agencies get larger shares because the city is.
We don't expect a thank you note, do we? I guess not. You one thing I didn't quite understand, you said the general fund budget was in the 90,000s. Is that right? I see 105,000.
Millions.
Millions, I mean.
Right. So our total general fund budget for the first year on the revenue side, our revenues incoming was around that 92. I don't have it right in front of me. And the expenditure side was over 100 million because of those significant capital projects that we have. So we have our revenue budget and our expenditure budget.
Okay. When we take money out of reserves for some project, as you mentioned, or for some activity, do we then replace that? In other words, do we shoot for a continuing reserve fund of the same amount?
Right. So the city has a reserve policy where we have a 15% reserve and a 5% reserve. So it's a total of 20% reserve for emergency situations and for working capital. So we, per city council policy, maintain at least 20% of our general fund and library fund budget in reserves. We have significantly more than that 20% city council policy currently. And so that's why we're able to use some of those reserves for these one-time strategic initiatives and investment in the community.
There was a headline in the paper today that the state is awash in money. That was the exact headline. Since they're awash in money, do they intend to share any of that additional sharing with the cities? Or?
Not directly, no. They certainly have their own stimulus program that they have for our low-income residents throughout the state. So they're doing additional stimulus funding to our residents. We may see additional funding maybe through Project Home Key or certain grant programs like that, but not directly back to the city, no.
And finally, since the sales tax is $32.7 million, and that is a significant amount of our budget, do we get anything from online sales by residents of Thousand Oaks?
Yeah, so online sales will go into the county pool. So if you are shopping online at Costco, Target, Amazon, all those retailers, it's complicated how the formula is, but some of that money does come back through the county pool and then gets distributed to each of the cities.
So it's not by cities, it's by counties then?
Yeah, online goes into the county pool.
Thank you, and thanks again for a very discernible budget explanation.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I do have some questions, but I see that Mayor Pro Tem Engler has his hand up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick question, really on the sales tax. We are at lower sales tax area. Ms. Boscarino, have you had an opportunity to look into whether some of our large ticket items, such as the auto mall, has attracted out of area sales? Is that something that they track over there? Have you tracked it?
So we don't know specifically the city, unless our economic development manager is, where those people are coming from. I can guarantee you 100% that resident or some of the customers are coming from outside of City of Thousand Oaks limits. Absolutely. Certainly within the county and within LA County as well. They are attracted to our auto mall. We have a whole wide variety of auto dealers, and some auto dealers are only in our city and aren't in other cities anywhere near here. So we certainly do attract people from outside the area, but we don't get that information.
All right, thank you. I would just empirically, I would think, let's see, the tax out in LA is
Much higher.
10% now? How much?
It probably depends. It depends which city you're in. Some of them are over 10%.
So, and we're at 7.5, 7.25.
7.25.
Right. So I would just empirically, I would think our tax, our sales tax position advantages us in some ways in our community.
Absolutely.
I would hope that we're attracting people from out of the area. Just an overhead and just a comment. I think Ms. Boscarino and your team, I'll echo some of my colleagues' praise for your efforts in this, just presenting the budget. But in terms of overall, this budget is something that the citizens should be very proud of. In a time when revenues were down because of COVID, all the things we went through last year, and to come out this year with after the grants and reimbursement from the feds and from the state, we now are in a position really to move forward on a lot of the items that have been on the docket for some time. This is a real comment on our citizens, and particularly you, in fact, in our finance department. City staff has really helped guide this community, and I wish to thank you for it.
Thank you. Ms. Boscarino, at the very beginning, you mentioned the Community Budget Engagement Survey, and what really stood out is the response to address homelessness issues as well as mental health. And that was followed by investment in environmental sustainability. I am wondering, I know we set aside $10 million in this particular budget to deal with affordable housing and homelessness. I was wondering if you could elaborate, expound on this a little bit more, including mental health, simply because that is usually under the jurisdictional purview of the county.
Yeah, so total budget is actually over 16 million in the budget for affordable housing and homelessness services. 10 million was just from the general fund, but we have our two housing funds, our housing successor and our housing trust fund, that also have additional budget. So total investment is $16 million that we've set aside over the next 2 years for these two efforts. As far as, mental services, the county is typically the one that provides mental services. We certainly do have, like we mentioned, our one-time $1 million grant program, and that will go to some nonprofits as well, that I'm sure there are those out in the community that may provide those types of services. We also have a position that is dedicated as our neighborhood and social services liaison. And so they certainly work with that, those in the county and those nonprofits throughout the community on identifying and providing services as well. And then I'll let our city manager jump in if he has anything to add on the mental services.
Thanks so much, Jamie. I was just going to suggest that Chief Fryoff share a couple of words, because I think this is one of those often lost components of how we work and integrate with our county partners here. Mental health support is a function that originates out of the county infrastructure. And that said, we've been quite engaged on a variety of aspects with it, and that includes crisis intervention teams, discussions, but most importantly, as it relates to homelessness, having our behavioral health partnership. And so, Jim, if you don't mind just sharing a few words about how our vulnerable populations officers bring those behavioral health resources out into the field with them to interact with our homeless population. It's important, I think, for the community to know.
Yeah, thank you very much, City Manager. Yes, we do work very closely with behavioral health. For those that are not aware, the behavioral health services in the county provides the mental health services for every city in Ventura County. They're funded through the state, oftentimes with grants, and that's managed by the department head, Savette Johnson. Dr. Savette Johnson is in charge of the Behavioral Health Board. And we work in conjunction with them on a variety of fronts. Not only do they respond with us when we go to assist our people experiencing homelessness, that we take their employees in the field with us to these different encampments to provide services, but they're also available. So when we respond to calls of people in crisis, we can request a crisis response team to come out or to be available for phone calls, for consultations, because we have a pretty vast county. So oftentimes that service is done over the phone, and we can get them guidance and get them resources immediately, and get them a casework even assigned. And then we have follow-up that's conducted through behavioral health as well. We are definitely working very closely with them as we navigate those issues with those experiencing not only homelessness, but also for people that are encountering mental health crisis. Obviously, as you know, this month is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so we work very closely with not only behavioral health, but the other groups in the county, such as NAMI, the National Alliance on Mentally Ill, to help bring services to those in the community that need it. But that service is correct. You're absolutely correct, Drew, that this is met by the county's behavioral health department rather than the city's individually or the police department. But our officers do receive additional training on crisis intervention that we did not used to have. It's been going on for, probably 20 years now. And we have over 98% of all of our patrol staff are now trained in crisis intervention techniques to help better de-escalate, communicate, and then coordinate with our behavioral health partners to provide the necessary resources for our community members.
Thank you, Chief Freihoff. This is excellent information for everyone, and I hope that people at home are watching this and listening to this, as we will not be able to solve the homelessness issue without really wrapping our arms and our head around all of the support services that go along with that. And while I have you, Chief Freihoff, there is a resident who did ask a question this evening that is in a supplemental packet, wondering about how has the city goal of inclusion been taken into account in the development of these budgets? That is a question for Ms. Boscarino, but also, let me see. How has it been taken into account when evaluating the services the Ventura County Sheriff's Office provides to the city? What changes in local policing can the city influence, given that we do not currently have our own police department? And this is coming from a resident in a supplemental packet.
So I'll take the first part of the question on inclusion in the city's budget based on the city's council's new goal. As I mentioned in my presentation, we have a robust staff training program and budget directed towards staff training. And we just started our new initiative, the DIBS initiative, which is Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging. And so our staff are currently going through that training on DIBS. And I know our human resources.
Oh, we just lost Jamie.
Yeah.
All right, maybe
I'll jump in for her.
Go ahead.
I'll jump in for her while she gets back online. One of the important components.
Discussed a lot of the training we started over the past few months, and those are going to be included now within the budget and moving forward, having translation service. And then also looking at our website and making sure our website is fully ADA compliant and inclusive as well. Since this is a new city council goal, we'll be looking at a staff, city council, and a management basis and figuring out what are other areas that we can address with this moving forward.
Thank you, Jamie. We did lose you just for a few seconds, but go ahead, Drew, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add, one of the things that's important for residents that may be new to looking at how the priorities and goals roll through the organization, all of our staff reports actually have an indication on the end of them that draws back a connection to these areas. And so when you run a large organization that has multiple different touch points, there are a lot of investments that occur throughout the year that are related to priorities and to goals. And so to that end, you will see, as Jamie was mentioning, there's quite a few touch points there, and you'll see more and more throughout the year. They're woven in throughout the budget. And this is the study session. We'll have a budget message that goes with the final budget, and we'll edify some of those pieces as we go through that. But as it relates to police portion of your of the question that you read, Chief Ralph actually opened our meeting tonight talking a little bit about exactly one of those types of investments, which is the new dashboard. So I'll just give him a couple quick minutes here to touch on that.
Thank you also, Drew. Yes, you're correct. So the dashboard is one of the new components that we're adding for transparency, for people to see what we're doing, and how that interlays with the current desire of our council for diversity and inclusion. We also have within the Sheriff's Office, we've implemented new bias-based training, which we are doing now on a bi-monthly basis. And then also we're constantly evolving as an organization to meet the needs of our communities, to make sure that we're providing excellent police services for the communities that we serve. And as the chief, I've also reached out to numerous advocacy groups, including Buen Vecino, Adelante, our interfaith groups as well, to make sure that we're providing the most stellar police services for the city of Thousand Oaks.
I have no doubt about that, Chief Freihoff. Thank you so much. And let's see, do I have any other questions?
Yes.
Councilmember McNamee, your hand is up again, I see.
Yes, please. I've got two follow-up for Ms. Boscarino. When I make a purchase from Amazon, they know exactly what city I am in. When I had my medical supply company of some 26 years, every time we filled out our monthly sales tax report, I had to break it down by city. Why is it that the money's going from Sacramento to the counties, and we are relying on a county to figure out where to allocate that money within the county when they're not clear as to which city it goes to? Why, with this modern technology, we're not able to have it come back directly down to the penny to Thousand Oaks? I don't want to rely on Ventura County to distribute this, because how do they know what the sales were in Thousand Oaks? Can you give me some insights as to why we're doing it this way and not using the technology that is currently being used in the industry?
Right. So the reason it's done this way is because that is what the state says. So it's an antiquated tax allocation system for the state. And the county actually isn't evaluating where they think it goes. It's just based on the total share of the total sales tax revenue. So if Thousand Oaks has 20% of total sales tax revenue, we get 20% of the county pool. So it's certainly something that we are looking at a staff level. But as it is right now, that is how the state's sales tax allocation method is.
Thank you. Second question deals with car leases. One of the largest tax revenue sources we get is from auto sales as well as leases. How do we ensure that the leases we're receiving from Sacramento, the appropriate sales tax that we should from that sales tax to leases?
Yeah, so thankfully the city partners with a sales tax consultant who works directly with the state, and they have a great understanding of the sales tax system. And they will, because we have a contract with them, they will audit our sales tax payers for free for the city and ensure that our city is receiving the sales tax that it is rightly owed. So we talked about this the other day, and that's certainly something that we're going to be reaching out to them and have them investigate and make sure that we are getting the proper sales tax from car leases.
I appreciate that. When you told me the story how Ferrari dealership, we were not getting our appropriate sales tax from the leases from Sacramento, that begs the question of that taking place also with the other car dealerships. So I applaud your effort to work with that company to do the audit and see where we are with it. I don't think it's going to be very involved. it should be pretty clean to see what the sales taxes are for the leases here and what are we getting back from the state. And again, I just want to echo my other council members' comments that you and your staff do a phenomenal job with the budget. And thank you so much for guiding us through it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions from perhaps Councilmember Adam or Mayor Pro Tem Engler? Councilmember Jones? Mr. Adam?
Thank you, Mayor. I was ready to make a motion if we're at that stage.
I believe we are.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I would like to say that we have been presented with a remarkable budget. We really have. The staff's been working on this since December of last year. Considering the challenges this city has faced with COVID, to be presented with a structurally balanced budget that still has room for capital improvement project in the city is quite remarkable. We'll continue paving streets as we've done for the past few years. We have the best streets in the county and we'll continue to do that. We'll continue some great projects, as was mentioned earlier, with our sidewalk widening project on Teal Boulevard that won the American Public Works Association Project of the Year. We'll look forward to more projects like that. We've got money set aside for our homeless population. It's just amazing what we've been able to do. And it's not just spending wisely, it's also saving wisely. I know Jamie and the team are always looking for ways to save money. And one of the best examples is the way we've handled the pension situation here in Thousand Oaks. We've refinanced our pension liability. It's going to save our taxpayers $30 million. We're going to have our pensions paid off in about a dozen years. And we also created a pension rate stabilization fund that's there as a rainy day fund for our pensions. And we put $22 million into this fund. Jamie and the staff invested it so wisely that in just 2 years, it's up to $29 million. We've gained $7 million in value. It's a double-digit return over the last couple of years. Amazing story for the citizens of Thousand Oaks that's been handled in such a way. We've staffed very prudently. We have 381 people working for the city, and we've kept that number over the last 10 years. Our forecasts are always conservative, and it shows with the budget that's been presented to us tonight. And the icing on the cake, in all the years I've been here and in all the years that the city's been incorporated, we have never raised the sales tax once. We're still at a base rate of 7.25%. And as has been stated, a lot of cities can't say that. Oxnard's at 9.25%. Ventura's at 7.75%, and there's cities in Los Angeles County that are 11% and beyond. So we've managed to maintain all the core services and keep us a low tax city, which is a huge benefit to our citizens. So I would like to move that we approve the operating budget and we set up a final meeting. I think it's sometime in June, if I'm not mistaken.
June 8th.
June 8th. Thank you, Mayor.
So we have a motion to approve recommendations 1 and 2, and I wish we could advertise it much more prominently via our social media channels that the City of Thousand Oaks sales tax is only at 7.25%. I think that should be a campaign, a media campaign for the city. I think it's excellent. Again, this would not happen without the experience and knowledge that our staff has, and our team is just incredible. And so they make us look good. What can I say? But it's their hard work around the clock that really is to be commended for this. So with that, I will ask the city clerk for a roll call vote. Thank you.
Councilmember Adam?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye. And I'd like to thank Councilman Adam for his very nice summation of the budget.
Councilmember McNamee?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Engler?
Yes.
And Mayor Bill De La Pena?
Yes.
That motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much. We don't have any department reports, and we will go straight to our city manager, Drew Powers.
Thank you so much, Mayor Bill De La Pena. And just following on your last point about sales tax, myself and Economic Development Manager Haider Alawami probably twice a week have to share that information with prospective businesses that are coming to the area. And to think that businesses are not making decisions based on that would not be accurate. It is absolutely a factor as part of our competitive advantage. And so you're correct in highlighting that as something that is an advantage to us. And our prudent fiscal management from the council down is what allows us to keep it that way. And so my thanks to Jamie. I'm glad we get to continue to move this budget forward, and we'll be back before you in June. Prior to that, though, we do have 2 meetings in a row next week and the following week. Our meeting next week, as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, will be on the 18th. And that will be a study session on the general plan land use alternatives. And that'll be followed by a meeting on the 25th. And that will be the general plan land use alternatives decision by the city council. And so single items, we do have some consent. We don't have any consent items next week. We will have some consent items on the 25th, but trying to keep the meeting really focused on that large topic. So meetings the next 2 weeks. There will be, as we talked about earlier, there will be limited ability for in-person public comments at the starting at next week's meeting. There will be protocols in place. There will be a table right outside the front door as folks arrive, but reminding you of the responsibilities that will get you signed up to speak. But given those limitations, we encourage virtual participation as we've done throughout the pandemic and will continue to have as we move forward. Ease of participation and ease of sign up. So I encourage you to utilize that format if at all possible, given those limitations. As we move further into June and July, we're hopeful for additional state guidance that will allow for more and more flexibility. But with that, I'll pass it back to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. I do have a quick follow-up question. We are at limited capacity here at the Sure Forum. What happens with the overflow, should there be an overflow of residents wanting to speak next Tuesday and the Tuesday after? Will they be kept outside? Will the people who are in here be asked to leave? Have we figured that out yet?
Yeah, so we have a variety of protocols in place, and our city clerk and city attorney and HR director and risk manager have been working on that. We do have a monitor that will be in the lobby, which is a standard part there. But if we do end up at a place where we reach capacity, we're going to be encouraging folks we will sign them up, and they'll have an email waiting for them when they arrive back home so that they can participate virtually. That's why we encourage them to do so. It eliminates that uncertainty.
Thank you so much. We do have 3 closed sessions, which will be announced by our city attorney, Ms. Noonan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We do have 3 closed sessions tonight. We have 2 pending litigation matters pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9A. The first one is Clint versus Gessler in City of Thousand Oaks. The second one is Flores and Reyes versus Halub and the City of Thousand Oaks. And then the third closed session matter is conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. pertaining to property located at 384 Herbs Road in the City of Thousand Oaks. Negotiating on behalf of the city will be the city manager, the city attorney, the deputy city manager, and the finance director and the economic development manager. And negotiating on behalf of the property owner will be Hillcrest Christian. Under negotiation will be price and terms. It is unlikely that I will have anything to report following these closed sessions.
Thank you very much. And we will adjourn tonight in memory of Phil Gatch, our former community development director and city manager. As a 38-year city employee, Phil served as our 5th city manager from 2003 to 2005. After completing his studies at Pierce College, Phil earned a bachelor's degree from California State University, Northridge, and a master's degree in planning and public administration from USC. He was employed as a planner in the city of West Covina for 3 years before joining Thousand Oaks in 1967 as a planning assistant. 3 years later, Phil was appointed as planning director the same year our current general plan was adopted. He was director of the department for more than 3 decades and remained one of the city's longest tenured employees. Phil is considered the chief architect of the city's planning blueprint, its general plan, our general plan. He oversaw the enactment of policies and municipal code provisions to implement Thousand Oaks' guiding document. Through his work, Phil is credited with the quality of life and attractive physical environment we all experience today in Thousand Oaks. For decades, Phil charted the city's course of development encompassing planning, building, housing, and code compliance. He was a treasure chest of knowledge for planning tools and policies with a keen ability to look into the future. In 2004, to commemorate and honor his outstanding commitment to our community, to the planning profession, and his deep affection for Thousand Oaks, the City Council dedicated a mature oak tree to Phil on the Civic Arts Plaza grounds. We owe Phil Gatch a generous thank you for his leadership and guidance through the years, for helping to envision and build this quality community we all call home. Phil was preceded in passing by his wife Nancy, and they have 4 adult children, Philip, Garrett, Ariana, and Brandon. Phil will be deeply missed by his family, many friends, colleagues, and the community. And with this, the City Council is adjourned to next Tuesday, May 18th. Good night.